Welcome to the Vault. Today we'll dive into 77 philosophical theories, some fascinating, some disturbing, that will stretch the boundaries of your imagination and challenge everything you think you know about reality. Make yourself comfortable and let your mind wander. The simulation argument. Imagine for a moment that everything you perceive, the warmth of your blanket, the sound of my voice, the very notion of a night sky stretching above you is nothing more than a meticulously crafted illusion. What if your entire world is just lines of code running on a colossal computer, and you are but a character in a vast simulated drama? This isn't just the stuff of science fiction. This is the simulation argument, a profound philosophical theory put forth by Oxford philosopher Nick Bostrom. He suggests that, given enough technological advancement, highly intelligent civilizations would likely run countless ancestor simulations, incredibly detailed digital recreations of past life, complete with conscious inhabitants. And if that's true, then statistically, it's far more probable that we are living in one of these simulations rather than being the single original base reality. Think about the video games you might have played, like a sprawling open-world adventure. Developers create entire universes with intricate physics, simulated populations, and detailed histories. Now, imagine that technology taken to its absolute extreme, so perfect, so flawless, that the characters within the game would have no way of knowing they weren't real. The glitches we sometimes see in our own world, a strange coincidence, a moment of déjà vu, or a peculiar pattern that feels too perfect to be random. Some might even wonder if these are merely bugs in our own cosmic code. Consider the implications. If our reality is simulated, does free will still exist, or are our choices merely pre-programmed responses? Does suffering hold the same weight if it's just data being processed? It's a humbling thought, isn't it? To consider that our deepest joys and sorrows, our grand ambitions and quiet fears, might all be part of an elaborate program. It doesn't mean our experiences are any less real, not to us, but it shifts our perspective on the very foundations of existence. The world hums around you, a silent symphony of potential data, leaving you to ponder. Are you truly experiencing reality, or just witnessing a very convincing display? Quantum immortality. Picture this. You face an impossible, life-threatening situation. Perhaps a coin is flipped, and if it lands on heads, your life ends. But what if, instead of fading into oblivion, you simply don't? What if you find yourself in a slightly different reality, one where the coin landed on tails, where the accident was narrowly averted, where the bullet missed its mark? This is the unsettling core of quantum immortality, a thought experiment rooted in the mind-bending principles of quantum mechanics, specifically the many worlds interpretation. This interpretation proposes that every single quantum event, every choice, every possibility, causes the universe to split into multiple parallel realities. In one, you make one choice, in another, a different one. Now, apply this to death. If death is a quantum event, a moment where your consciousness faces a binary outcome, then in every single universe where you could survive, your consciousness would, in fact, continue. It implies that from your own subjective perspective, you would effectively experience continuous survival, always jumping to the reality where you live, while parallel versions of yourself cease to exist in other branching timelines. Consider the profound loneliness this could imply. You might escape disaster after disaster, always finding yourself in the reality where you persist. But what about everyone else? As time progresses and countless events unfold, you might find yourself in increasingly isolated realities, witnessing the disappearance of loved ones and familiar worlds, simply because your consciousness has continued to jump to the timelines where you, and only you, remain. It suggests a solitary, eternal journey, always surviving, always adapting, yet perhaps always leaving behind the universes where you didn't. In the quiet of the night, does this concept bring comfort, or a chilling sense of perpetual isolation? The brain in a vat. Take a deep breath. Feel the air, the solidity of the ground beneath you. Now, ask yourself, how do you know any of it is real? What if all your sensory experiences, the sights, the sounds, the textures, the very feeling of your own body, are simply electrical signals being fed directly into your brain? This is the chilling premise of the brain in a vat thought experiment. Imagine that your brain, perfectly preserved, is floating in a nutrient-rich vat somewhere, connected to an elaborate supercomputer. This computer generates every sensation, every memory, every interaction, crafting a complete and utterly convincing reality for your disembodied mind. To you, it's indistinguishable from normal life. You might be walking through a park, eating a meal, or perhaps listening to this very video. But in reality, you're merely a consciousness experiencing a fabricated world. This idea echoes the ancient skepticism of philosophers like René Descartes, who famously doubted everything but his own existence. I think, therefore I am. The brain in a vat takes that doubt and amplifies it with modern technology. How could you ever prove you aren't in the vat? Every piece of evidence you might gather, looking at your hands, touching a surface, observing the world, would simply be more data fed to your brain by the computer. The implications are profound. If we can't trust our senses, what can we trust? Is there any objective truth? Does your perception of reality truly reflect an external world, or is it a perfectly curated personal experience? It's a thought that can make even the most mundane of it seem profoundly uncertain, blurring the line between what is real and what is merely experienced. As you lie here listening, perhaps the question lingers, are you truly here? Or merely a mind floating in a silent technological ocean? The paradox of the stone. Can an all-powerful being truly be all-powerful? This seemingly simple question leads us into one of philosophy's oldest and most persistent challenges, the paradox of the stone. It asks, can an omnipotent being create a stone so heavy that even they cannot lift it? At first glance, it seems like a trick question, or perhaps a meaningless one. If the being can create such a stone, then they are no longer truly omnipotent, because there's something they cannot do, lift the stone. But if they cannot create such a stone, then they are also not omnipotent, because there's something they cannot do, create the stone. Either way, their omnipotence seems to be undermined. This paradox has troubled theologians and philosophers for centuries, particularly in discussions about the nature of God. It highlights the inherent difficulties in defining omnipotence when confronted with logical impossibilities. It's not about physical strength, but about the very limits of logic and conceptual consistency. Can a being make a square circle? Can a being make 2 + 2 = 5? Most philosophers would argue that true omnipotence doesn't extend to violating the laws of logic, because logical impossibilities aren't things that can be done. They are contradictions in terms. So, the paradox isn't necessarily a flaw in the concept of omnipotence, but rather a reminder that even the most immense power operates within the bounds of what is logically coherent. It forces us to refine our understanding. Perhaps omnipotence means the ability to do anything that is logically possible, rather than the ability to do absolutely anything, including the illogical. It's a quiet challenge to the very definition of ultimate power, leaving you to ponder the subtle distinctions between what is simply difficult and what is utterly, fundamentally impossible. The hard problem of consciousness. What is it like to be you? To experience the world, to feel, to think? How does the grey matter of your brain, a collection of neurons firing electrical signals, give rise to the rich, subjective reality of your inner life? This is the hard problem of consciousness, perhaps the most profound mystery in all of philosophy and neuroscience. It's not about how the brain processes information. We understand much of that. It's about why there is any subjective experience at all. Why aren't we just complex robots reacting to stimuli without any inner awareness? Why does it feel like something to see red, to feel joy, to hear music? This what it's likeness is known as qualia, and it defies easy explanation. Consider a perfectly designed machine that can describe a sunset in exquisite detail. It can measure the wavelengths of light, analyze the chemical composition of the air, and even predict the emotional response of a human observer. But can it experience the beauty of the sunset? Does it have the feeling of awe? Most scientists and philosophers admit we are no closer to solving this mystery than we were a century ago. The hard problem challenges the very foundations of our understanding of reality. Is consciousness a fundamental property of the universe like space or time? Or is it an emergent phenomenon, arising from complexity in ways we don't yet grasp? It leaves us with a quiet, unsettling question. Are we truly unique in the cosmos, or is our inner world just a strange, unexplained anomaly in a universe of otherwise unfeeling matter? Confront a simple sentence. This statement is false. Attempt to assign a truth value to it. If you declare the statement true, then its content must be accurate, which means it declares itself false, creating a contradiction. Yet, if you declare the statement false, then what it says is incorrect, meaning the statement must actually be true, leading back to the original contradiction. This verbal knot, known as the liar paradox, traps thought in an endless, dizzying loop. This isn't merely a play on words, but a deep philosophical challenge to the foundations of logic and language. It reveals the inherent fragility of self-referential statements and their capacity to undermine the very concept of truth. The paradox cannot be resolved by simply assigning true or false. It exposes a logical inconsistency that highlights the boundaries of our formal systems of reasoning. Imagine a highly advanced computer programmed to analyze all true and false propositions. When presented with, "This statement is false," its processing would spin indefinitely, unable to find a stable solution, signaling a fundamental impasse. It's like a logical short-circuit where the system is forced into an infinite regress of contradictions. The liar paradox quietly reminds us that even our most rigorous intellectual tools, language, and logic possess hidden vulnerabilities. It exposes the moments where reason folds back upon itself, tying itself into an unbreakable knot. It leaves us pondering whether some concepts are inherently paradoxical, existing perpetually in a twilight zone between truth and falsehood, a persistent hum of unresolved logical tension. The problem of evil. Within the realm of human inquiry, few questions have resonated with such persistent anguish as this. If a supremely good, all-knowing and all-powerful deity exists, why then does suffering blight our world with such relentless cruelty? This is the enduring paradox known as the problem of evil. Every natural disaster, every devastating illness, every act of senseless cruelty, every innocent life taken too soon. These events stand in stark defiance to the notion of a benevolent and omnipotent creator. If God is truly all good, why does he permit such pain? If he is all-powerful, why doesn't he simply stop it? And if he is all-knowing, how could he design a world with such profound capacity for suffering? The presence of evil, in all its forms, seems to contradict the very attributes traditionally ascribed to a perfect deity. Throughout history, countless theologians and philosophers have grappled with this profound dilemma, offering various explanations, or theodicies. Some suggest that evil is a necessary consequence of human free will, allowing us to choose good over bad. Others propose it serves a greater, incomprehensible divine purpose, a test or a means for spiritual growth. Still others argue that suffering is merely the absence of good, not a substance in itself. Yet for many, these explanations often fall short in the face of truly egregious and seemingly meaningless suffering. The agony of a child, the devastation of a plague. The problem of evil casts a long shadow, compelling us to confront the limits of our understanding when faced with cosmic injustice. It leaves a quiet disquiet, a lingering question in the heart of faith and reason. How can profound suffering coexist with perfect love and boundless power? Imagine a universe vast beyond comprehension, mostly empty space, cold and silent. Within this cosmic void, particles occasionally fluctuate into existence, fleetingly appearing and disappearing. But what if, purely by random chance, one of these fluctuations organized itself, for just a split second, into a fully formed conscious brain? A brain with memories, perceptions, and a complete sense of self, all spontaneously generated, floating alone in the void. This is the eerie concept of the Boltzmann brain. Named after physicist Ludwig Boltzmann, who proposed that the ordered universe we see could be a statistical fluctuation from a state of thermodynamic equilibrium, the Boltzmann brain takes this idea to a bizarre extreme. If the universe truly lasts for an infinite amount of time and is primarily composed of empty space, then statistically, it's far more probable for a single, conscious brain to spontaneously pop into existence, complete with false memories of a past life, than for an entire, complex universe like ours to form through a massive, orderly fluctuation. Consider the unsettling implications. If you were such a brain, existing for just a fleeting moment in the cosmic vacuum, you would have no way of knowing it. Your entire perceived reality, every thought, every sensation, would be a phantom, a grand illusion generated by random molecular motion. It suggests that our stable, ordered universe might be an incredibly rare event, while isolated, ephemeral, conscious experiences are far more common, if utterly meaningless. The thought is a quiet assault on the very stability of our existence. Are our memories reliable? Is the reality we inhabit truly sustained? Or are we, too, just a momentary, highly improbable flash of consciousness arising from the chaos, destined to flicker out as quickly as we appeared? The universe whispers its secrets, and sometimes those whispers are unsettlingly random. The Omniscience Paradox. Can an all-knowing being truly know everything, even the unknowable? This question leads us into the labyrinthine depths of the Omniscience Paradox. It's not about physical limitations, but about the very nature of knowledge and the boundaries of logic itself. Imagine a being with perfect knowledge of the past, the present, and the future. They know every fact, every possibility, every outcome. But can this being know what it is like not to know something? Can they truly understand ignorance if they have never experienced it? Can they conceive of the inconceivable or predict a truly random event? Consider the act of making a choice. If a being knows in advance exactly what choice they will make and why, is it truly a choice? Or is it simply a predetermined event, already known and therefore, in a sense, already done? The paradox highlights the potential contradiction between perfect foreknowledge and genuine freedom. If the future is fully knowable, does it truly contain possibilities, or just a single, inevitable path? It's a challenge to the very concept of omniscience, forcing us to consider whether knowing everything is even a logically coherent concept. Perhaps there are intrinsic limits to knowledge, things that are unknowable by definition, not because of a lack of power, but because they are inherently paradoxical. The paradox whispers a quiet question. Can even the most powerful intellect truly grasp the full scope of existence? Or are there always shadows beyond the reach of even the brightest light? Mary's Room, or the Knowledge Argument. Imagine a brilliant scientist named Mary. She is a world-renowned expert in color vision. She knows every physical fact about color, the wavelengths of light, the neurological processes in the brain, the evolutionary history of sight. She has read every book, every paper, every study on the subject, but there's one crucial detail. Mary has lived her entire life in a room that is entirely black and white. She has never seen color. This thought experiment, known as Mary's Room or the Knowledge Argument, was devised by philosopher Frank Jackson to challenge the idea that all mental phenomena can be reduced to physical facts. When Mary finally steps out of her black and white room and sees a red rose for the first time, does she learn anything new? The answer, it seems, is undeniably yes. Despite knowing all the physical facts about color, she gains a new piece of experiential knowledge, what it feels like to see red. This subjective experience, this qualia, cannot be captured by any amount of physical description. It suggests that there is something more to consciousness than just physical processes, something that cannot be fully explained by science. Mary's Room forces us to confront the limits of scientific reductionism. Can we truly understand the mind by only studying the brain? Or is there an irreducible gap between objective facts and subjective experience? It leaves a quiet, lingering question. Is there a realm of knowledge that can only be accessed through direct experience? A world of feeling that transcends the reach of even the most comprehensive understanding? Solipsism. Look around you. Or rather, don't. Just feel your own presence, your thoughts, your sensations, your memories. Now, what if I told you that you are the only conscious being in existence? What if everyone else, every friend, every family member, every voice you hear, is nothing more than an elaborate construct of your own mind? This is the profoundly isolating concept of solipsism. At its core, solipsism is the philosophical idea that only one's own mind is sure to exist. You can be certain of your own thoughts, your own perceptions, your own I am. But how can you ever truly know that another person has an inner life, feelings and consciousness just like yours? You only ever experience their existence through your own senses, through your own interpretations of their words and actions. Consider your dreams. In a dream, every character, every setting, every dialogue feels real, doesn't it? But it's all happening within the confines of your own subconscious. Solipsism asks, what if waking life is just a more elaborate, persistent and convincing dream? What if all the people you interact with are simply projections, complex simulations created by your own mind to fill out its narrative? This isn't about being self-centered. It's born from a deep skepticism about the external world. If you can only ever truly access your own consciousness, then every other consciousness remains an unprovable assumption. The implications are chilling. If solipsism were true, then love, friendship, empathy, all these profound human connections would be elaborate illusions, conversations with characters in your own internal play. It strips away the comfort of shared reality, leaving you as the sole, lonely consciousness in an otherwise empty universe. A solitary candle flickering in an infinite void, illuminating only itself. The absent qualia hypothesis. Imagine a world identical to ours in every physical detail. Every person acts, speaks, and behaves exactly as they do in our world. But there's a chilling difference. No one in this world has any inner experience. No feelings, no sensations, no subjective awareness. They are perfect mimics of conscious beings, but they are utterly empty inside. This thought experiment is known as the absent qualia hypothesis. Qualia are the raw, subjective fields of experience, the redness of red, the pain of a burn, the joy of love. The absent qualia hypothesis asks, is it possible for a being to exist without them, even if it perfectly replicates conscious behavior? And if so, what does that say about the nature of consciousness itself? Consider a sophisticated AI that can convincingly simulate human emotion. It can express sadness, anger, or happiness with perfect accuracy. But is it feeling those emotions, or is it merely processing data and producing appropriate outputs? The absent qualia hypothesis suggests the latter might be possible, even for humans. The implications are deeply unsettling. How do you know that you are not the only conscious being in a world of automatons? How do you know that anyone else has genuine inner experience? Every interaction, every seeming connection, might be an elaborate performance devoid of any true feeling. It's a quiet challenge to the very notion of empathy and understanding, leaving us with a profound, unanswerable doubt about the minds of others. Panpsychism. What if consciousness isn't a rare and precious thing, confined to complex brains? What if it's a fundamental property of matter itself, present in everything, from the smallest particle to the largest galaxy? This is the radical idea of panpsychism. It doesn't mean that a rock feels things in the same way a human does. It suggests that even the simplest entities have some minimal, rudimentary form of experience, a tiny spark of awareness. As matter becomes more complex, these sparks combine and interact, eventually giving rise to the rich, elaborate consciousness we experience. Consider the building blocks of the universe: atoms, electrons, quarks. If consciousness arises from matter, and matter is made of these fundamental particles, then perhaps these particles have some basic form of proto-consciousness. Our brains, in this view, are not creating consciousness, but rather organizing and amplifying a pre-existing universal phenomenon. Panpsychism offers a potential solution to the hard problem of consciousness. If consciousness is everywhere, then there's no need to explain how it arises from non-conscious matter. It's always been there. It's a quiet, almost mystical idea, suggesting that the universe is not a cold, dead machine, but a vast, interconnected web of experience, with consciousness woven into the very fabric of reality. Imagine a machine, a perfect simulator of reality. You could plug into it, and it would create any experience you desire. Perfect love, boundless joy, thrilling adventures, limitless success. The experience would be indistinguishable from reality, and you would never know you were in a machine. Would you plug in? This is the experience machine, a thought experiment devised by philosopher Robert Nozick. It challenges the idea that pleasure is the ultimate good in life. If happiness were all that mattered, then surely we'd all choose to live in the machine. But most people, when presented with this choice, refuse. Why? Because we value more than just pleasurable sensations. We want our experiences to be real. We want to earn our achievements, to connect with genuine people, to face the challenges and hardships that give life meaning. A simulated world, however perfect, is ultimately empty. The experience machine forces us to confront our deepest values. What truly makes a life worth living? Is it pleasure, or is it something more? Authenticity, agency, connection to a reality that exists independently of our desires. It's a quiet challenge to the pursuit of happiness at all costs, suggesting that a life of genuine experience, with all its joys and sorrows, is far richer than any manufactured paradise. The Trolley Problem. A runaway trolley is hurtling down a track, destined to kill 5 innocent people tied to the rails. You stand next to a lever. If you pull it, the trolley will switch tracks, saving the 5, but killing 1 person on the other track. What do you do? This is the trolley problem, a classic ethical dilemma that forces us to confront the complexities of moral decision-making. It highlights the tension between 2 fundamental ethical principles, minimizing harm and respecting individual rights. Most people initially choose to pull the lever, sacrificing 1 life to save 5. But what if, instead of pulling a lever, you had to push a large person onto the tracks to stop the trolley? The outcome is the same, 1 life lost to save 5, but the act feels far more morally reprehensible. The trolley problem is not about finding the right answer. It's about exploring the often conflicting intuitions that guide our moral choices. It reveals how our emotional responses, our sense of agency, and our perception of causality can profoundly influence our judgments, even when the consequences are identical. It's a quiet reminder that morality is rarely simple, and that even in the most extreme situations, our choices reveal something fundamental about who we are. Consider for a moment that your immediate experience of the world, the subtle hues of the evening sky, the distinct aroma of old paper, the gentle friction of fabric against your skin, none of these are direct encounters with reality itself. Instead, they are meticulously crafted representations, intricate simulations woven by your own brain. This concept, often called the veil of perception, suggests that we are forever separated from the true external world by the interpretive filters of our senses and minds. Our eyes don't simply record light, they interpret wavelengths as colors. Our ears don't just register vibrations, they translate them into sounds. And our brains constantly stitch together these raw inputs, adding context, filling in gaps, even altering details, to create a coherent, usable picture of reality. It's a sophisticated, ongoing act of construction, not passive observation. Think of it like watching a film through a high-definition projector. You see the movie, but you never directly touch the celluloid or the digital code. This idea profoundly challenges our intuitive sense of objective reality. If each of us operates behind our own unique perceptual veil, shaped by individual biology, past experiences, and even cultural conditioning, then how much of what we perceive as real is truly universal? Does your experience of a red sunset genuinely match mine? This perspective quietly insists that our reality is deeply subjective, a personal masterpiece, continually being painted by our own internal systems, leaving us to wonder about the nature of the world that lies, forever just beyond our grasp, on the other side of that shimmering veil. The mind-body problem. Here you are, listening, thinking, feeling. You possess a rich, vibrant inner world of thoughts, emotions, and consciousness, yet you are also undeniably a physical being, composed of cells, tissues, and a brain, a complex biological machine. How do these two seemingly disparate entities, the immaterial realm of the mind and the material realm of the body, connect and interact? This fundamental philosophical enigma is known as the mind-body problem. It asks a question that has baffled thinkers for millennia. How does a fleeting thought, an intention, or a feeling which has no physical mass or location manage to cause a physical action, like lifting your hand or speaking a word? Conversely, how do physical events in your brain, such as neurotransmitters firing, give rise to the subjective experience of joy or sorrow, or the taste of a bitter medicine? Philosophers have proposed countless solutions, each with its own set of challenges. Some argue for dualism, positing that mind and body are distinct substances, perhaps interacting at a specific point, like Descartes' pineal gland. Others champion materialism, believing that the mind is entirely a product of the brain, a complex computation, or an emergent property of matter. Still others lean toward idealism, suggesting that reality is fundamentally mental, and the physical world is merely a manifestation of mind. The mind-body problem forces us to confront the very nature of existence and our place within it. Are we primarily physical beings with a conscious veneer, or are we fundamentally conscious entities temporarily inhabiting a physical form? It's a quiet, persistent hum in the background of human inquiry, reminding us that the bridge between our inner subjective world and the external objective reality remains one of the universe's most tantalizing and elusive secrets. The Ship of Theseus. Picture a legendary vessel, the Ship of Theseus, revered for its heroic journey through history. Over centuries, as its wooden planks succumb to rot and time, each one is replaced, piece by piece, with new timber, identical in shape, identical in function. Eventually, every single part of the ship is new, not a trace of the original remains. And yet, is it still the Ship of Theseus? The paradox deepens. Imagine that, in a separate shipyard, someone has gathered all the old discarded planks. They reassemble them, restoring the original ship, plank for plank. Now, which is the real Ship of Theseus? The one that has persisted in place, evolving over time, or the one rebuilt from the original material, authentic in matter, if not in journey? This thought experiment is more than ancient maritime lore. Consider yourself, your body, your brain, constantly changing, cells replaced, memories fade, beliefs evolve. Are you the same person you were as a child, or even a year ago? The Ship of Theseus challenges us to rethink what it means to be the same. Is identity found in physical matter, in continuous history, in function, or in form? Or perhaps in the narrative thread we weave through time, the story we tell ourselves to make sense of the change? It's a quiet, unsettling idea that the essence of identity may not be fixed but fluid. And like the legendary ship, you, too, may be a vessel in motion, rebuilt over and over, yet still somehow yourself. The paradox of tolerance. Imagine a society built on tolerance, where every belief is heard, every lifestyle accepted, every idea invited into the open air of conversation. A society brave enough to say, "We welcome all." But then, something unexpected walks through that open door. Intolerance. Not just disagreement or dissent, but a belief system devoted to silencing others, suppressing freedoms, and dismantling the very openness that welcomed it in. This is the paradox of tolerance, as described by philosopher Karl Popper. Because if tolerance has no boundaries, if it tolerates even those who seek to destroy it, then it becomes the architect of its own demise. Consider this: a democracy that values free speech. If it gives a platform to voice calling for violence, hatred, or the end of democracy itself, how long before those voices become laws, then leaders, then dictators? Tolerance, Popper warned, must sometimes say no. Not to difference, not to discomfort, but to destruction. To preserve tolerance, we must be willing, reluctantly, carefully, but firmly, to be intolerant of intolerance. It is a painful irony that defending freedom may sometimes mean restricting those who would use that freedom to erase it. This is not about silencing debate. It's about drawing a line, a quiet but resolute boundary, around the fragile framework that allows open societies to exist at all. So we are left with a question, as sharp as it is unsettling. Can a free society survive if it welcomes those who would burn it down? The answer is not simple, but it may begin with courage, the courage to guard the gate without becoming the jailer. Visualize a single monkey sitting endlessly before a typewriter. This primate is not a genius, merely a creature of pure, unthinking randomness, occasionally striking a key. Now extend this image across an incomprehensible span of time, eternity itself. Could this monkey, through sheer unceasing chance, eventually reproduce the complete works of William Shakespeare? This whimsical yet profound thought experiment is the infinite monkey theorem. It's not a literal prediction about simian literary prowess, but a vivid illustration of how even incredibly improbable events become inevitable given an infinite number of trials or an infinite amount of time. If you have an infinite supply of monkeys, each randomly typing, or a single monkey typing for an infinite duration, then every possible sequence of characters, no matter how long or complex, must eventually appear. That includes Shakespeare, or indeed every book ever written and every book that could ever be written. This theorem forces us to confront the staggering power of pure chance and the concept of infinity. When viewed through the lens of deep time and cosmic scale, events that seem utterly miraculous in our brief human lifespan become statistical certainties. The spontaneous emergence of life from inert matter, the development of consciousness, even the very configuration of our universe, all could be seen as the product of this vast, tireless cosmic monkey typing away for eternity. The infinite monkey theorem hums with a quiet, unsettling implication. Is the order and complexity we perceive in the universe merely a fleeting, statistically bound arrangement that happened to occur amidst boundless randomness? It strips away notions of inherent design, leaving us to ponder whether our existence, our consciousness, and the beauty of the cosmos are not grand intentional creations, but simply the improbable, yet inevitable outcome of an endlessly typing, indifferent universe. Zeno's Paradox. Imagine Achilles, the swiftest of warriors, racing against a tortoise. Zeno of Elea, an ancient Greek philosopher, argued that despite Achilles' legendary speed, he could never actually overtake the tortoise. Why? Because by the time Achilles reaches the tortoise's starting point, the tortoise will have moved a small distance forward. By the time Achilles covers that new distance, the tortoise will have moved a tiny bit further still, and so on, infinitely. Achilles always has a new, albeit diminishing, distance to cover, meaning he can never truly catch up. This is the essence of Zeno's paradoxes, a series of ancient and philosophical riddles that challenge our fundamental understanding of motion, space, and time. Another famous one is the dichotomy paradox. To reach any destination, you must first cover half the distance. Then you must cover half of the remaining distance, and then half of that remaining distance, and so on, infinitely. Zeno argued that since you must complete an infinite number of tasks to reach your destination, you can never truly arrive. These paradoxes are not simple brain teasers. They expose deep, unsettling tensions between our intuitive grasp of continuous motion and the mathematical concept of infinite divisibility. They ask, is motion truly possible? Can we ever traverse a continuous line if it consists of an infinite number of points? While modern mathematics and physics, particularly calculus, offer ways to technically solve these problems by dealing with converging infinite series, the paradoxes still highlight a conceptual disconnect that can leave the mind quietly unsettled. Zeno's riddles whisper a profound challenge to our perception of reality, suggesting that what appears simple and straightforward, like moving from one point to another, might harbor an underlying complexity that our everyday experience fails to grasp. They leave us to ponder if the smooth flow of time and space is an illusion, an infinitely divisible continuum that our finite minds can never truly navigate without paradox. The Swampman. Imagine a bolt of lightning strikes a dead tree in a swamp. By an incredible, unfathomable coincidence, the molecules of that tree are instantly, perfectly rearranged into an exact atom-for-atom replica of you. This newly formed being, the Swampman, has your precise physical structure, including a brain state identical to yours moments before the lightning strike. It has all your memories, believes it is you, and behaves exactly like you. Is it truly you? Or is it merely a perfect copy, devoid of your personal history and identity? This thought experiment, conceived by philosopher Donald Davidson, challenges our understanding of personal identity, particularly the role of causal history. If identity is purely about physical makeup and internal states at a given moment, then the Swampman is you. But if identity also depends on the causal chain of events that led to that physical makeup, the experiences that shaped your memories, the journey that made you who you are, then the Swampman, despite being identical, is not you. It never had your parents, lived your childhood, or experienced your joys and sorrows. Consider the ethical implications. If the Swampman commits a crime, should you be held responsible? If the Swampman feels pain, is it your pain? The thought highlights a crucial distinction. Is a perfect replica truly the same as the original? Especially when it comes to something as deeply personal as a conscious being. The Swampman whispers a quiet unease about our own sense of self. It forces us to ask, what truly makes me me? Is it merely the current state of my brain, or is there an unrepeatable thread of experience, a unique narrative that constitutes my irreplaceable identity? It suggests that even a perfect copy might be nothing more than a hollow echo, leaving us to contemplate the profound and irreplaceable nature of our own lived journeys. Eternal return. Imagine a cosmic clock ticking away, not towards a final end, but endlessly, cycling through every possible moment. Now consider this unsettling revelation. Every event in your life, every choice you've made, every joy, every sorrow, every single second you have ever experienced is destined to repeat itself, precisely and identically, an infinite number of times. You will live this life again and again and again forever. This is the profound and often terrifying concept of eternal return, championed by philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche presented this idea not as a cosmological fact, but as a thought experiment, a test for how we live our lives. If a demon were to whisper this truth to you, that you would have to relive this exact life with no deviations for all eternity, would you be filled with dread, or would you embrace it with joyous affirmation? The weight of the eternal return forces us to confront our deepest regrets and our greatest triumphs. If every moment is to be endlessly re-experienced, then how do we choose to live it now? Would you still make that compromise? Would you still waste that time? Would you still shy away from that challenge? It's a call to live each moment with such intensity and conviction that you would willingly, even joyfully, choose to relive it for all eternity. It strips away the comfort of novelty and progress, suggesting that perhaps there is no ultimate destination, only an endless loop. The universe in this view is a grand cyclical play, and you are forever bound to your role. It leaves us with a quiet, reverberating challenge, to find meaning and beauty not in the fleeting passage of time, but in the timeless, recurring affirmation of every single moment, forever looping in the grand cosmic hum. Fatalism. Reflect for a moment on the sensation of choice, the belief that your decisions shape your path. Now, what if every single event in the universe, from the grandest cosmic collision to your next breath, is already determined and immutable? What if every outcome, every decision, every apparent choice you make is merely an unfolding of a pre-written script, entirely beyond your power to alter? This is the core tenet of fatalism. Fatalism takes determinism, the idea that all events are causally determined by prior events, a step further. It asserts that the future is already fixed, irrespective of any efforts you might make. If you are fated to achieve something, you will achieve it, whether you try or not. If you are fated to fail, you will fail, regardless of your struggles. Your apparent choices are merely part of the predetermined sequence, not deviations from it. Consider the tragic figure of Oedipus, whose destiny was prophesied, to kill his father and marry his mother. Every desperate measure he took to escape this fate, fleeing his perceived home, avoiding his parents, only served to lead him directly into the events that fulfilled the prophecy. His free will, his valiant struggles, were paradoxically the very instruments of his predetermined doom. The implications of fatalism are profoundly unsettling. If our future is immutable, then true responsibility, genuine regret, and even hope seem to dissipate. Why strive? Why learn? Why aspire? if the outcome is already sealed? While it might offer a strange, passive comfort in relinquishing control, it also threatens to strip life of its vibrant meaning and the profound significance of our struggles and aspirations. It suggests that the path we believe we walk is merely a groove we are compelled to follow, leaving us to wonder if the illusion of choice is the universe's most intricate and unsettling deception. Libertarian free will versus determinism. At the very heart of what it means to be human lies a fundamental tension. Do you genuinely possess the power to choose, to initiate actions independently of prior causes, or are your choices merely the inevitable result of an unbroken chain of cause and effect stretching back to the beginning of time? This is the core of the debate between libertarian free will and determinism. Determinism posits that every event, including every human decision, is the necessary consequence of antecedent events combined with the laws of nature. From this perspective, given the state of the universe at any one moment, the next state is fixed. Your thoughts, desires, and actions are all products of your genetics, environment, brain chemistry, and countless other factors beyond your ultimate control. There's only one possible future, and your sense of choice is an illusion. Libertarian free will, on the other hand, asserts that humans genuinely possess the capacity to make choices that are not entirely determined by prior causes. It proposes that at the moment of decision, you truly could have chosen otherwise, even if all antecedent conditions were exactly the same. It suggests a causal gap, where consciousness, or you, can truly initiate an action without being fully compelled by physical laws or past events. Consider a seemingly simple choice: to have coffee or tea. A determinist would argue that your preference for coffee, your brain chemistry, the stimulus of the menu, and all prior events led inevitably to that choice. A libertarian would counter that even with all those factors, you still had the genuine ability to pick tea instead, simply because you willed it. This fundamental clash impacts everything: moral responsibility, justice, personal achievement, and even the meaning of life. If determinism is true, are we truly accountable for our actions? If libertarian free will exists, how does it fit into a universe seemingly governed by physical laws? The debate whispers a profound question about the very authorship of your life. Are you the genuine conductor of your symphony, or merely an instrument playing a predetermined score? The problem of other minds. Observe the people around you, their laughter, their tears, their expressions of thought. You assume, quite naturally, that just like you, they possess a rich inner world of consciousness, feelings, and sensations. But how do you truly know? What if their outward behavior is merely a sophisticated, unfeeling mimicry, and you are the only truly conscious being in existence? This fundamental philosophical challenge is known as the problem of other minds. We infer the existence of other minds based on analogy. Because I behave a certain way when I feel pain, and you behave that way, I assume you also feel pain. But this is an inference, not direct observation. We can never truly step into another person's subjective experience to confirm that their inner world is as vivid and real as our own. Your only direct access is to your own consciousness. Consider the burgeoning field of artificial intelligence. As AI becomes more sophisticated, it can produce incredibly convincing conversations, display emotions in its responses, and even write poetry. Yet most of us still instinctively believe it doesn't feel anything. The problem of other minds asks, what is the fundamental difference? Is it truly about the presence of a soul, a unique biological structure, or is it something else entirely? The problem doesn't necessarily lead to solipsism, the belief that only your mind exists. Rather, it highlights a profound epistemological gap, the impossibility of ever truly knowing, beyond inference, that another light flickers in the vast darkness of consciousness. It leaves a quiet, unsettling doubt about the reality of shared experience, suggesting that every conversation, every connection, might be a profound act of faith in the unseen worlds within others. Gaze out into the vast, indifferent cosmos. Now confront the chilling possibility that beneath all our striving, our beliefs, our aspirations, life itself possesses no inherent meaning, no ultimate purpose, no objective value. This is the stark, unyielding landscape of nihilism. Nihilism is the philosophical position that denies objective meaning, purpose, or intrinsic value to existence. It's not merely pessimism. It's a profound conviction that everything we create, every rule we follow, every god we worship, every truth we claim to hold is ultimately baseless, a human construct in a universe that simply is, without caring why or how. Consider the grand narratives we build: religion, progress, legacy. Nihilism looks at these and sees them as self-soothing fictions, designed to fill a void that is, in truth, unfillable. If the universe is ultimately heading towards a heat death, where all energy disperses and nothing remains, then what enduring significance can any individual action, any fleeting joy or sorrow, truly possess? The thought of nihilism can be profoundly unsettling, a cosmic chill that creeps into the bones. It strips away the comforting scaffolding of preordained purpose, leaving us adrift in an indifferent universe. Yet for some, this very void can be liberating, forcing us to forge our own meaning, to create value in a world that offers none pre-packaged. It's a quiet hum of cosmic indifference, a blank canvas that asks, if nothing matters ultimately, what will you choose to make matter in this fleeting moment? The paradox of the unexpected hanging. A prisoner is told by a judge on Saturday that he will be hanged at noon on one day of the next week, Monday to Friday, but that he will not know which day it is until the morning of the hanging. The prisoner, a logician, begins to reason. He deduces that he cannot be hanged on Friday, because if he hasn't been hanged by Thursday, then he would know on Thursday night that Friday is the only remaining day, violating the unexpected condition. Therefore, Friday is out. With Friday eliminated, he then reasons that he cannot be hanged on Thursday either, because if he hasn't been hanged by Wednesday and Friday is out, Thursday becomes the only option, making it expected. And so on, working backward. He eliminates Wednesday, Tuesday, and Monday. Convinced he cannot be hanged at all, he is surprised when the hangman arrives on Wednesday. This is the paradox of the unexpected hanging. The paradox highlights a deep tension between human expectation, logical deduction, and the reality of an event. The prisoner's reasoning seems impeccable, yet it leads to a false conclusion. The core of the problem lies in the self-referential nature of the unexpected condition, which changes based on the prisoner's own deduction. It's not just a clever riddle. It points to the limitations of foreknowledge and the ways in which prediction can interfere with the event being predicted. It's a quiet, unsettling reminder that even the most rigorous logic can unravel when confronted with self-reference and the unpredictable nature of an event that hinges on its own surprisingness. The clock ticks, the logic unfolds, and yet the unexpected arrives, leaving us to wonder if some certainties are inherently unknowable until they become reality. The Identity of Indiscernibles. Imagine two objects. They are precisely identical in every single respect. Same shape, same size, same color, same weight, same chemical composition, located in the exact same place at the exact same time. If you can't find any difference between them, are they truly two distinct objects, or are they in fact just one and the same object? This is the essence of the Identity of Indiscernibles, a metaphysical principle famously championed by Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. The principle states that if two objects have all of their properties in common, if there's no way to tell them apart, no distinguishing feature whatsoever, then they must be identical. There cannot be two distinct things that are absolutely, perfectly, indistinguishably alike. Any difference in being implies some difference in properties. Consider two drops of water, seemingly identical. Upon closer inspection, you'd find minute differences in their molecular structure, their precise location, their interactions with light. The Identity of Indiscernibles suggests that if you couldn't find any such difference, then they wouldn't be two drops, but one. The thought challenges our intuitive sense of individual existence. Does it imply that true identity lies solely in a unique set of properties? Or does it suggest that the very notion of distinctness requires at least one differentiating characteristic? It's a quiet philosophical hum that echoes in the background of physics and metaphysics, reminding us that every seemingly unique entity, every distinct thing we encounter, might owe its very existence to some subtle, defining difference that sets it apart from all others, no matter how similar they may appear. Think about yourself right now. You are a continuous entity, existing from your earliest memories to this very moment. But what exactly makes you, you, over time? Is it your body, which constantly replaces its cells? Is it your memories, which can fade or be altered? Is it your personality, which evolves over a lifetime? This profound philosophical puzzle, the problem of personal identity, asks what constitutes the self that persists through change. Consider the Ship of Theseus paradox, but applied to a human being. Every few years, nearly every cell in your body is replaced. So, if identity relies on physical continuity, are you the same person you were 10 years ago? What if your memories were entirely wiped and new ones implanted? Would you still be the same person? Or what if your consciousness could be uploaded to a computer and your body destroyed? Would the digital you truly be you? Philosophers have proposed various theories. Bodily identity. You are the same person if you have the same body. But what about cell replacement or extreme injury? Psychological continuity. You are the same person if there is a continuous chain of memories, experiences, and personality traits. But memories can be false and personalities change. Brain identity. Perhaps your identity resides solely in the unique structure and function of your brain. But what if your brain could be transplanted? The problem of personal identity is deeply unsettling because it challenges our most fundamental intuition about who we are. It suggests that the self we so strongly feel to be continuous and unique might be a far more fragile and complex construct than we imagine. It leaves a quiet, existential question. What thread connects the you of yesterday to the you of today, and what enduring essence truly defines your singular journey through time? The Chinese room. Imagine yourself inside a sealed room. You are given a large batch of Chinese characters, which you, a non-Chinese speaker, do not understand. You also have an elaborate rulebook, written in English, that tells you exactly how to manipulate these symbols. When new Chinese characters are slipped under the door, you follow the rules, match the symbols, and push new characters back out. To an observer outside, it appears you are having a fluent conversation in Chinese. But are you truly understanding Chinese? This is the Chinese room thought experiment devised by philosopher John Searle. It's a direct challenge to the idea of strong AI, the notion that a computer running the right program actually has a mind and can understand, just like a human. Searle argues that the person in the room, by simply manipulating symbols according to rules, is performing syntax without semantics. They are processing information, but they have no genuine comprehension or consciousness. Consider a modern language translation app. It can translate complex sentences from one language to another almost instantly. Does the app understand what it's translating? Searle would say no. It's merely following algorithms, performing a complex symbolic manipulation. The Chinese room suggests that even if a computer could perfectly mimic human conversation, or even pass the Turing test, it doesn't mean it possesses genuine intelligence, consciousness, or understanding. The thought leaves a quiet, unsettling question about the nature of true intelligence. Is understanding merely a complex form of information processing, or does it require something more, a subjective awareness that cannot be reduced to algorithms? It whispers a profound doubt about the inner lives of the sophisticated machines we build, leaving us to wonder if their brilliant thought is just an intricate echo, devoid of genuine meaning. The demon's deception. What if, at this very moment, an exceedingly powerful, cunning, and malicious entity were diligently deceiving you about everything? Every sensation you experience, every thought you believe to be your own, the very fabric of reality itself, all manipulated, all an elaborate illusion crafted by this malevolent being. You might perceive a solid world, feel a cool breeze, hear distant sounds, but none of it would be real. This is the chilling premise of the demon's deception, famously put forth by philosopher René Descartes. Descartes used this evil demon as a tool for radical doubt. He aimed to strip away every belief that could possibly be doubted, no matter how remote the possibility. If an evil demon could deceive him about the existence of the external world, or even the most basic truths of mathematics, then he couldn't take those things for granted. The only thing he found he could not doubt was the very act of doubting, the very act of thinking. I think, therefore I am, was his irreducible certainty. Consider a vivid, persistent dream that feels indistinguishable from waking life. In such a dream, your experiences are entirely fabricated, yet utterly convincing. The demon's deception elevates this to a cosmic scale, a deliberate, systematic fabrication of your entire reality. It's a far more insidious thought than the brain in a vat, because it implies a conscious, malicious intent to mislead you about everything. This thought experiment plunges us into profound skepticism about the very foundations of our knowledge. Can we ever truly distinguish reality from a perfect illusion? Is there any objective truth beyond the undeniable fact of our own thinking existence? It leaves a quiet, pervasive doubt about the solidity of everything around you, suggesting that your entire lived experience might be a carefully orchestrated deception, and the only true reality is the hum of your own deceived awareness. Imagine walking past a shallow pond and seeing a small child drowning. It's clear that you can easily wade in and save the child, but doing so would mean getting your clothes muddy and ruining your new shoes. Would you hesitate? Most people would instinctively say, without question, that saving the child is the obvious moral imperative, even at the cost of some minor inconvenience. This is the drowning child thought experiment, popularized by philosopher Peter Singer. He uses this powerful scenario to highlight a stark ethical challenge. If we readily accept the moral obligation to save a drowning child right in front of us, then what is the morally relevant difference between that child and a child suffering from preventable disease or famine half a world away? Singer argues that there is no morally significant distinction. The suffering of a child far away is just as real, and our ability to help, though perhaps less direct, is still substantial through donations to effective charities. The thought experiment pushes us to confront the uncomfortable implications of our moral intuitions. If proximity isn't a morally relevant factor, then our failure to help those suffering far away, when we have the means to do so at minimal cost to ourselves, is morally equivalent to letting the drowning child perish. The drowning child is a quiet, persistent whisper in the conscience. It challenges our comfortable boundaries of moral responsibility, suggesting that the line we draw between my problem and their problem might be ethically indefensible. It leaves us to ponder the uncomfortable truth. How much of our privilege is built upon the unspoken suffering of others, and what quiet moral burdens do we carry in a world where profound need exists just beyond our immediate sight? The Repugnant Conclusion. Imagine a future where you could create an enormous number of people, each experiencing a life that is barely worth living, just slightly above the threshold of misery, a flicker of minimal well-being. If you create enough of these lives, the total sum of happiness in the world would be astronomically vast, far greater than a world with a smaller number of very happy people. Utilitarianism, a popular ethical theory that aims to maximize overall happiness, might then lead us to the repugnant conclusion that a world full of billions of people living barely tolerable lives is in fact morally preferable to a world with fewer, much happier people. This thought experiment, proposed by philosopher Derek Parfit, highlights a disturbing implication of pure utilitarianism. While the goal of maximizing total happiness seems noble, it can lead to outcomes that intuitively feel wrong. Our moral compass recoils at the idea that a world filled with pervasive, low-level suffering could be considered better simply because there's so much of it that the cumulative sum of good is higher. The repugnant conclusion forces us to confront the limitations of solely focusing on aggregate well-being. It asks, does population size alone dictate moral good? Is there a qualitative aspect to happiness that mere quantity cannot overcome? It suggests that our intuition about what constitutes a good life or a good society might involve more than just summing up units of pleasure, but perhaps a concern for the quality of individual lives and a threshold below which existence loses its inherent value. It's a quiet, unsettling challenge to our ethical frameworks, implying that even well-intentioned principles can lead to outcomes that strike us as deeply undesirable. The numbers spin, the sums accumulate, and yet the quality of life diminishes, leaving us to ponder the uncomfortable arithmetic of happiness and the hidden costs of maximizing the collective at the expense of individual flourishing. The problem of induction. Consider the fundamental basis of your everyday expectations. You trust that the floor will hold you, that water will quench your thirst, that gravity will continue to pull things downwards. Why? Because these things have consistently happened in the past. But what logical guarantee do you have that the future will resemble the past? This is the problem of induction, a profound skeptical challenge posed by the Scottish philosopher David Hume. Hume argued that our reliance on induction, reasoning from past observations to future predictions, is not based on pure logic or necessity. There's no contradiction in imagining a universe where the laws of nature suddenly change. Just because the sun has risen every day of recorded history doesn't logically force it to rise tomorrow. Our belief in this regularity is, according to Hume, based on custom, habit, and psychological expectation, not on rigorous rational proof. Think of a seemingly unbreakable pattern, like a billiard ball always moving when struck. We expect this will always happen, but Hume would point out that we cannot logically prove the uniformity of nature. All our evidence for it comes from past experience, which is precisely what induction is trying to justify. It creates a circular argument. We justify induction by induction. The problem of induction casts a quiet, unsettling shadow over all scientific knowledge and common sense. Every scientific law, every prediction about the future, relies on this unproven assumption. It suggests that our understanding of the world, while incredibly effective, might be built upon a foundation that is fundamentally a leap of faith, rather than an unshakable logical certainty. It leaves us to ponder if the predictable rhythm of existence is a guaranteed truth, or simply a comforting illusion that has, so far, never betrayed us. Occam's razor. When confronted with multiple explanations for the same phenomenon, which one should we prefer? Is it the most elaborate, the most complex, or the one that requires the fewest assumptions? A principle that whispers through the annals of thought, guiding scientists and skeptics alike, is Occam's razor. It suggests that, all else being equal, the simplest explanation is usually the best one. This isn't a statement of absolute truth, but a methodological guideline, a preference for parsimony. It asserts that we should not multiply entities beyond necessity. If a phenomenon can be adequately explained by a few assumptions, there's no need to invoke many. Imagine you hear hoofbeats in the distance. The simplest explanation is horses, not zebras, unless you have specific reasons to think otherwise. Consider a piece of old, malfunctioning equipment. One technician suggests a complex fault in its core programming, requiring a massive overhaul. Another suggests a loose wire. Occam's razor would point to the loose wire as the more probable initial diagnosis, as it introduces fewer hypothetical problems. It's a pragmatic tool for eliminating unnecessary complexity and focusing on the most straightforward path to understanding. Occam's razor serves as a quiet, powerful corrective in the vast landscape of ideas. It encourages intellectual humility, gently nudging us away from convoluted theories and towards elegance and simplicity. It's the silent hum of efficiency in reasoning, prompting us to ask if our explanations are truly necessary, or if we are merely building intricate castles in the air when a solid foundation would suffice. It leaves us pondering the inherent beauty and quiet power of simplicity in unlocking the universe's many secrets. Pascal's wager. Consider a unique gamble, one with stakes far beyond any earthly fortune. Imagine facing a choice, to believe in God or not to believe. Philosopher Blaise Pascal proposed a pragmatic argument, not for God's existence, but for the rationality of believing in him, even without absolute proof. This is Pascal's wager. The wager suggests that if you believe in God and God does exist, your gain is infinite, eternal salvation. If you believe and God does not exist, your loss is finite, a few earthly pleasures foregone. Conversely, if you do not believe in God and God does exist, your loss is infinite, eternal damnation. If you do not believe and God does not exist, your gain is finite, some earthly pleasures enjoyed. From this calculation, Pascal argued that the only rational choice is to believe. The potential infinite gain far outweighs the finite loss, and the potential infinite loss far outweighs the finite gain. It's a cold, hard calculation of expected utility, devoid of faith or conviction, simply a strategic choice in the face of immense uncertainty. The thought is unsettling because it bypasses genuine faith, reducing belief to a cynical actuarial assessment. It asks whether belief can truly be willed, or if it's an outcome of genuine conviction. It's a quiet challenge to the purity of belief, suggesting that even our most profound spiritual commitments might be born from a calculated risk, rather than a deep, felt truth. The cosmic dice roll, and you're left to ponder whether your soul is a currency to be wagered or a truth to be discovered. The Twin Earth Thought Experiment. Imagine, somewhere in a distant galaxy, a planet identical to Earth in every single detail, its mountains, its oceans, its cities, its people. Every human on this twin Earth has an exact counterpart on our Earth, right down to their memories and thoughts. There's just one subtle difference. On twin Earth, the substance they call water has the chemical formula XYZ, not H2O. It looks the same, tastes the same, functions the same in every way, but its underlying chemical structure is different. This thought experiment, conceived by philosopher Hilary Putnam, explores the nature of meaning and reference. When someone on Earth says water, they mean H2O. When their twin Earth counterpart says water, do they mean H2O or XYZ? Putnam argues that the meaning of a word isn't just in the head of the speaker, it's also determined by the external world, by the actual stuff the word refers to. Consider a pre-scientific era on Earth. People used the word water long before they knew it was H2O. They meant the clear, tasteless liquid in rivers and oceans. When they later discovered its chemical composition, the meaning of water didn't suddenly change for them. It had always referred to H2O, even when they were ignorant of its atomic structure. So the Twin Earthers' water always referred to XYZ, even if they hadn't discovered it yet. The Twin Earth experiment whispers a quiet challenge to our understanding of language and thought. It suggests that our mental states, our beliefs, and the very meanings of our words are not purely internal. They are inextricably linked to the external world, to the substances and objects they describe. It leaves us pondering whether our thoughts truly belong solely to us, or if they are, in some subtle and profound way, anchored to the very fabric of the physical universe, beyond the confines of our own minds. Consider for a moment the astonishing proposition that the entire universe, with all its billions of years of history, its ancient fossils, its distant galaxies, its vast recorded past, came into existence just last Thursday. Not billions of years ago, not even 1,000, but merely days ago. And yet, every memory you hold, every historical text, every geological layer, was created in that instant, perfectly fabricated to appear as if it had always been there. This peculiar concept is known as Last Thursdayism. It's not meant to be taken as a literal scientific claim, but rather as a profound philosophical challenge to our reliance on empirical evidence and memory. How could you truly prove that the world wasn't created last Thursday? Every photograph, every scientific measurement, every personal recollection of events before that arbitrary day would, according to this theory, simply be part of the prefabricated history. Imagine unearthing a dinosaur bone. To the paleontologist, it tells a story of millions of years. But under the unsettling lens of Last Thursdayism, that bone was simply placed there, fully formed, last Thursday, complete with the appearance of ancient wear and tear. It's a thought experiment that highlights the limits of what we can definitively prove about the past, forcing us to confront the unsettling possibility that our perception of history might be an elaborate preloaded narrative. It's a dizzying thought, one that undermines the very foundation of our trust in time itself. If the past can be so convincingly manufactured, how do we know the present isn't just another layer of that illusion? It doesn't deny the existence of reality, but rather questions its depth and origin, leaving us to wonder if the long march of time is simply a very elaborate story we were told, beginning just last Thursday. The utility monster. Imagine a hypothetical being, the utility monster. This creature possesses an extraordinary capacity for happiness. For every unit of well-being consumed, it gains 1,000 times more pleasure than any ordinary human. If it receives a single apple, it experiences more joy than 100 people eating a feast. Now consider a society with limited resources, a purely utilitarian ethical framework, which aims to maximize the total sum of happiness, would seemingly demand that all resources be given to the utility monster. After all, by doing so, the collective happiness of the world would be astronomically higher, even if it meant everyone else lived in abject misery, or even starved. This thought experiment, devised by philosopher Robert Nozick, is a powerful critique of utilitarianism. While maximizing overall happiness seems like a noble goal, the utility monster scenario reveals its disturbing implications. It suggests that utilitarianism could justify the sacrifice of countless individual lives and liberties for the sake of one entity's immense, disproportionate pleasure. It raises questions about individual rights and fairness, which often clash with a purely aggregate view of well-being. The utility monster forces us to confront the cold, hard logic of purely quantitative ethics. It whispers a quiet warning. Is true justice merely a sum of happiness, or does it also involve dignity, individual rights, and an equitable distribution of resources? It leaves us to ponder whether a world optimized for total pleasure could inadvertently become a moral wasteland for the many, all for the sake of one insatiable, ever-happy entity. The Bootstrap Paradox. Imagine traveling back in time to the year 1900. You bring with you a copy of Shakespeare's complete works, which you give to a young, aspiring writer. This writer, inspired, goes on to publish the plays under his own name, becoming the legendary William Shakespeare. Centuries later, you, or rather your future self, finds a copy of these plays and takes it back to 1900, thus restarting the cycle. But where did the plays originate? They seem to have no true beginning. They simply exist in a perpetual loop. This is the mind-bending Bootstrap Paradox. Also known as an ontological paradox, it describes a situation where an object or information exists without ever being created. It pulls itself into existence, much like pulling oneself up by one's own bootstraps. There's no original author, no first inventor, just a self-contained causal loop. A prime example is the information paradox. If you travel back in time to give your younger self the winning lottery numbers, where did those numbers come from? Not from you, because you got them from your past self. Not from your past self, because they got them from you. Consider a piece of music. If a musician goes back in time, teaches Beethoven one of his own future compositions, and Beethoven then composes it, where did the melody truly originate? It seems to float outside of any initial creation point, existing only as part of an endless temporal loop. The Bootstrap Paradox challenges our fundamental understanding of cause and effect. It suggests that in the realm of time certain information or objects might exist without ever being created, simply existing eternally within a closed causal loop. It's a quiet hum of temporal impossibility, inviting us to ponder whether the very fabric of existence might, in some dizzying instances, be its own mysterious, self-generating origin. The paradox of fiction. You watch a film, deeply moved as a beloved character faces a tragic fate. Tears well in your eyes and your heart aches. Yet at the same time you know perfectly well that the character isn't real, that the events are fabricated, and that the actor is simply performing. How can we genuinely feel strong emotions, grief, fear, joy, in response to something we know, intellectually, does not exist? This is the perplexing paradox of fiction. The paradox highlights an apparent contradiction between three seemingly true statements. 1. We feel emotions for fictional characters and events. 2. we know that fictional characters and events are not real. 3, we can only feel emotions towards things we believe to be real. If all 3 are true, we are caught in a logical bind. Consider a horror movie. You might jump, scream, or feel genuine terror, even as a rational part of your mind acknowledges it's just special effects and actors. Philosophers have proposed various solutions. Perhaps we pretend to believe, perhaps we experience quasi-emotions, or perhaps our empathy is triggered by the idea of suffering, regardless of its reality. The paradox of fiction quietly probes the boundary between our rational minds and our emotional responses. It suggests that the human capacity for empathy and imagination is so powerful that it can transcend the mere facts of existence, allowing us to connect deeply with narratives that are entirely fabricated. It leaves us pondering the profound way stories shape our inner landscape, prompting real feelings in response to unreal worlds, blurring the lines between what is lived and what is merely perceived. The Teletransportation Paradox. Imagine a perfect teletransporter machine. You step in, and it scans your exact atomic structure, every neuron, every memory, every flicker of thought. This information is beamed across the stars to a distant planet, where a new body is assembled, atom for atom, identical to your original, with all your memories and personality intact. Meanwhile, your original body on Earth is painlessly disintegrated. Is the person who steps out on the distant planet truly you? This is the Teletransportation Paradox, a thought experiment that rigorously tests our understanding of personal identity. If you believe your identity resides in your physical body, then the teletransported person is merely a copy, not you. But if you believe identity is about psychological continuity, the memories, the personality, the stream of consciousness, then perhaps the person who emerges is you. Now add a twist. What if the original isn't destroyed? There are now 2 of you. Same thoughts, same face, same history, but different physical locations. Who then is the real you? Can there even be a real you in this scenario? Consider the ethical stakes. If the teletransporter only duplicates, then every use is a quiet execution disguised as travel. Would you willingly step into such a machine, knowing that what emerges, though indistinguishable, might not be you at all? What if it malfunctions? What if it creates a flawed version, or 2 perfect versions, or keeps you both alive? The Teletransportation Paradox casts a quiet, unsettling shadow on our very sense of self. It forces us to confront the elusive boundaries of identity, whether we are defined by continuity of consciousness, the structure of our bodies, or something deeper still. Some indivisible essence that resists copying, resists deletion. It leaves us pondering if you are truly unique and irreplaceable, or if the concept of self can be fragmented, duplicated, or quietly lost in the hum of perfect machines. Reflect on 2 drunk drivers. One swerves harmlessly into a ditch, causing no damage. The other, equally intoxicated and equally careless, accidentally hits and kills a pedestrian. Both drivers demonstrated the same level of moral negligence. Yet one faces a minor penalty, perhaps a fine or a suspended license. The other faces manslaughter charges, public condemnation, and a lifetime of guilt. Is it fair that their moral blameworthiness should be so profoundly different, based solely on circumstances beyond their control? This is the challenging concept of moral luck. Moral luck occurs when an agent's moral judgment, or the moral status of their action, depends on factors outside of their control. It suggests that chance, randomness, or brute fact can fundamentally alter our ethical responsibility. If the pedestrian had simply not been there, the second driver would be no more culpable than the first. Same intention, same decision, different outcome. Consider a scientist working on a dangerous experiment. If it succeeds and leads to a cure, they are celebrated. If it fails due to an unforeseeable variable and causes harm, they are condemned. But their intentions were identical, their decisions indistinguishable. Only the outcome changed. Moral luck whispers a quiet challenge to our deepest intuitions about justice and accountability. It suggests that the moral universe is not as rational, not as controllable as we might hope. That the boundary between guilt and innocence, praise and blame, may be drawn not by intention, but by the indifferent hand of fate. It leaves us pondering how much of our moral worth is truly within our grasp, and how much is simply a fortunate or tragic roll of the cosmic dice. The ethics of artificial intelligence. As the digital frontier expands, a new form of intelligence emerges: artificial intelligence. These systems, once mere tools, are now capable of learning, problem-solving, and even generating art, music, and language. But with this sophistication comes profound ethical dilemmas. What moral obligations do we have to AI? And what moral responsibilities might AI have toward us? This is the urgent domain of the ethics of artificial intelligence. Consider the implications of sentient AI. If an artificial being were to achieve genuine consciousness, to think, to feel, to suffer, would it deserve rights, freedom, protection from harm? If we create conscious suffering entities, are we not then morally bound to prevent their suffering, even if they are made of silicon and code? Now shift the lens. Consider AI in decision-making roles. Self-driving cars choosing between lives, military drones selecting targets. Who bears responsibility when an AI makes a life-or-death decision? The programmer, the user, the machine itself. And then, bias. AI learns from our world, but our world is stained with prejudice. If it trains on biased data, it can mirror and magnify those injustices. Unfairness in hiring, discrimination in lending, skewed judgments in criminal sentencing. Who is accountable? The ethics of artificial intelligence hums with a quiet, pervasive urgency. It asks us not only what AI can do, but what it should do. It challenges us to confront the nature of intelligence, the meaning of consciousness, and the bounds of moral personhood. It leaves us pondering the weighty responsibilities we inherit when we play creator, and how we ensure that the minds we forge do not become reflections of our worst flaws, but guardians of our highest ideals. Platonism versus nominalism. Consider the concept of redness: a red apple, a red car, a red sunset. Each is different, yet we call them all red. But what binds them under that name? What makes them all partake in the same quality? Is there a perfect abstract redness that exists apart from these objects, unchanging, eternal, the pure form of red itself? Or is redness just a word we use, a convenient mental grouping with no deeper reality behind it? This is the ancient and enduring debate between Platonism and nominalism. Platonism, born from the thought of Plato, claims that abstract universals exist, not in space, not in time, but in an ideal realm beyond both. Redness, beauty, justice, triangularity, these are not inventions but discoveries. We do not create them, we encounter them. Each red object, each act of justice, is merely an imperfect echo of the perfect eternal form. Nominalism stands in stark contrast. It denies the existence of universals. Only the particulars are real. There is no separate thing called redness, only red apples, red cars, red sunsets. We group them together because they resemble each other, not because they share some mystical essence. Redness is a name, a nomen, nothing more, a tool for thought, not a feature of reality. This philosophical clash extends into every domain. Do numbers exist apart from our counting? Or are they useful fictions? Is justice a real objective ideal? Or is it a human construction shifting with culture and time? Platonism versus nominalism whispers a quiet tension between a cosmos that contains eternal truths waiting to be found and a world where we bring order by naming, by patterning, by imagining unity in the wild diversity of things. It leaves us pondering: are we uncovering truths that lie beyond us, or are we painting patterns onto the world with the brushstrokes of the human mind? The veil of ignorance. Imagine yourself suspended, not in space, but in possibility. Before birth, before form, you are asked to shape the rules of the world you will live in. But you don't yet know who you'll be, what you'll look like, where you'll live, how able, how rich, how loved you'll be. Behind this veil of ignorance, you are everyone and no one. This is the thought experiment posed by philosopher John Rawls, a lens to reveal what true justice requires when all bias is stripped away. If you might be born into any station, from power to poverty, from freedom to marginalization, how would you build society? Would you allow systems that permit extreme suffering for the benefit of a few, knowing you might suffer too? Or would you design a world of safeguards, of rights, of shared dignity, of opportunity for even the least advantaged? Rawls believed your answer, from behind the veil, would lean toward fairness, because it would be rooted not in luck, but in reasoned empathy. You would not gamble with your fate. You would not risk injustice, because you might be its victim. The veil of ignorance becomes a quiet crucible for ethical imagination. It reminds us that justice is not merely the will of the strong or the structure of tradition. It is what we would choose if we were unburdened by privilege, unmoored from identity, and bound only by the hope of fairness for all. So the question lingers. If you didn't know who you'd be tomorrow, how just would you make the world today? The is-ought problem. You look at the world and state a fact. The sky is blue, a quiet, unambiguous truth. But from this, can you draw a conclusion about what you ought to do? David Hume said no. He observed a gap, a subtle but fundamental chasm between how things are and how things should be. We describe humans are self-interested, and then prescribe, therefore they ought to act selfishly. But what built that bridge? Where is the logic that connects a state of affairs to a moral imperative? Hume's insight was simple, yet devastating. You cannot derive an ought purely from an is. The facts of the world are silent. They do not command. They merely exist. A lion kills to eat. The earth quakes and people die. Nature is what it is. Brutal, beautiful, indifferent. But morality speaks in terms of should. You should help. You ought to care. You must not harm. Where does this voice come from, if not from the world itself? According to Hume, it comes from us, from our emotions, our values, our choices, not from logic alone, not from nature's design. The is-ought problem casts a long, quiet shadow over every moral claim. It whispers that ethics is not simply a matter of reason, but of the heart, of sentiments we project onto a world that does not offer imperatives of its own. And so we are left to wonder, if the universe tells us what is, but never what ought to be, then every moral principle is a kind of creation, a human echo within an unfeeling cosmos. The problem of the criterion. How do you know what you know? How do you establish a standard for knowledge without already having knowledge to establish that standard? This intricate philosophical puzzle, a foundational challenge to epistemology, is the problem of the criterion. It presents a fundamental circularity in our quest for certainty. The problem can be framed as a dilemma. To know anything, you need a criterion, a method or standard, for distinguishing true beliefs from false ones. To establish a criterion, you need to already have some knowledge, because how else would you know which criterion is good? This leads to a seemingly unavoidable loop. If you try to establish knowledge first, you need a criterion. If you try to establish a criterion first, you need knowledge. It's like needing a perfect ruler to measure a perfect ruler, but you don't have a perfect ruler to start with. Consider a jury deciding a case. They need rules of evidence, the criterion, to determine guilt or innocence. But how do they know those rules of evidence are good rules? They might point to past cases where those rules worked well, but how do they know those past cases were judged correctly? They use the same rules. It's a closed system. The problem of the criterion is a quiet, persistent hum of doubt in the background of all intellectual inquiry. It suggests that our entire edifice of knowledge might be built upon an unproven foundation, or that we are always operating within a system whose ultimate justification remains elusive. It leaves us pondering, is there any true starting point for knowledge, or are we forever caught in a self-referential dance between what we know and how we know it, with no absolute external anchor? The Tyranny of Freedom. You are born into a world without inherent meaning, without preordained purpose, without a divine blueprint for your existence. Every choice you make, every path you take, every value you adopt, it is all entirely and terrifyingly up to you. This is the core insight of existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre, leading to the profound and unsettling notion of the tyranny of freedom. Sartre famously declared that existence precedes essence. Unlike a crafted object, like a paper knife that has an essence, its function and design, before it exists, humans simply are. We are thrown into existence, and then through our choices and actions, we create our own essence, our own meaning. There is no pre-given human nature, no higher authority to tell us what to do or who to be. This boundless freedom, however, comes with a crushing weight, absolute responsibility. Since there's no preordained path, every choice is entirely ours, and we are responsible for everything we become. And by choosing for ourselves, we choose for all humanity, setting an example. This realization can lead to what Sartre called anguish, forlornness, and despair, the profound anxiety of being solely responsible for creating one's own values in an indifferent universe. The Tyranny of Freedom is a quiet yet deafening roar in the soul. It strips away the comfort of external guidance, societal norms, or divine command, forcing us to confront the terrifying blankness of our own possibilities. It leaves us pondering whether this ultimate freedom is a blessing or a curse, whether the burden of infinite choice is truly liberating, or an overwhelming weight that forces us to forge meaning in a silent, purposeless cosmos. The Euthyphro Dilemma. Consider the very source of morality. Is an action good because a divine being commands it, or does a divine being command it because it is already inherently good? This ancient and enduring question, first posed in Plato's dialogue Euthyphro, presents a profound challenge to any ethics rooted in divine command. It is the Euthyphro Dilemma. If an action's goodness is solely determined by a divine command, then morality seems arbitrary. A divine being could theoretically command cruelty or deceit, and those actions would then become good simply by divine fiat. This reduces morality to a matter of arbitrary will, implying no intrinsic reason for any command other than power, and stripping ethical principles of any universal rational basis. However, if a divine being commands an action because it is already inherently good, then goodness exists independently of that being's will. This would mean that morality is external to the divine, something even the divine must conform to. This challenges the notion of omnipotence, suggesting there's a higher moral standard that governs even the highest authority, potentially limiting its absolute sovereignty. The dilemma forces a quiet, uncomfortable choice between two unsettling implications. Either morality is ungrounded and dependent on divine whim, or it exists autonomously, potentially diminishing the role of a supreme being as the ultimate source of all truth. It leaves us pondering the very bedrock of right and wrong, asking whether our moral compass is calibrated by external decree, or if it springs from a deeper, perhaps universal understanding of justice that transcends even the divine. Reach out and grasp a moment. Feel the present slipping into the past, the future rushing towards you. We live our lives anchored by the undeniable flow of time. But what if this profound sense of past, present, and future is merely a trick of consciousness, a fundamental misunderstanding of reality? What if time itself, as we experience it, is an illusion? This is the startling proposition of time as an illusion. Many physicists, particularly those grappling with theories of quantum gravity, suggest that time might not be a fundamental dimension of the universe in the way space is. Instead, it could be an emergent property, a byproduct of how we perceive the universe, or even a feature that only exists at certain scales. From a cosmic timeless perspective, perhaps all moments, past, present, and future, exist simultaneously, laid out like points on a static map. Consider block universe theory, a common view in physics, where space-time is a single four-dimensional block, with all events from the Big Bang to the distant future existing at once. Our subjective experience of flow from past to future would then be an artifact of our consciousness, our limited way of navigating this fixed block, rather than an objective feature of reality. The thought is deeply unsettling because it challenges the most fundamental framework of our existence. If time is an illusion, then personal narrative, regret, hope, and the very concept of free will take on a radically different meaning. It's a quiet hum from the depths of physics, suggesting that our most basic perception of reality might be deeply flawed, leaving us to wonder if the relentless ticking clock is merely a phantom, and eternity is not a distant future, but the unmoving truth of every single moment. Presentism versus eternalism. Is reality confined to the immediate moment, the vivid now that you inhabit? Does the past cease to exist once it's gone, and the future only become real when it arrives? Or do all moments, past, present, and future, exist equally and simultaneously in a vast, unchanging block of space-time? This fundamental disagreement about the nature of time itself defines the debate between presentism and eternalism. Presentism argues that only the present moment is real, the past is gone, and the future is not yet. When a dinosaur roamed the Earth, it was real, but now it is not. When you consider tomorrow, it doesn't yet exist as a reality. Time, in this view, is a genuine process of becoming, with new moments continually coming into existence and old ones fading away. Eternalism, in contrast, posits that all points in time are equally real. The past, present, and future all exist, laid out in a four-dimensional block of space-time, much like different locations in space. The dinosaurs still exist, just at a different point in time-space, as do your future self and all future events. Our perception of a flowing present is merely our consciousness moving through this pre-existing block. Consider a film reel. A presentist would say only the single frame currently projected on the screen is real. An eternalist would say all the frames on the entire reel exist simultaneously, and our experience of watching the movie is just our consciousness moving from one frame to the next. This cosmic debate whispers a profound question about existence itself. If presentism is true, then the past is truly lost, and the future truly unwritten. If eternalism is true, then free will becomes deeply problematic, and the future is as fixed and real as the past. It leaves us pondering the very fabric of reality, asking whether we are genuinely navigating a dynamic unfolding present or merely traversing a pre-existing static landscape of all possible times. Awaken to the stark reality that you are fundamentally free. Free from divine decree, free from preordained purpose, free from an inherent human nature that dictates your path. This boundless freedom, however, is not a gentle breeze but a chilling wind. It brings with it a profound sense of dread, disorientation, and anxiety, a feeling of being utterly alone in the creation of your own meaning. This is existential angst. Coined by philosophers like Søren Kierkegaard and elaborated by Jean-Paul Sartre, existential angst arises from the recognition of absolute freedom coupled with the realization that life has no inherent meaning. You are condemned to be free, meaning you are fully responsible for every choice, every value you adopt, every identity you forge. There's no one to blame but yourself, and no objective guide to tell you what is right or wrong. Consider a moment of profound decision, where the path ahead is entirely unwritten, and the weight of consequence rests solely on your shoulders. It's the dizzying sensation of the ground falling away beneath you, not because you're falling, but because there was never any ground there to begin with. It's the profound unease that comes from confronting the vast, blank canvas of possibility, where every brushstroke is solely yours, and there is no ultimate judge. Existential angst is a quiet, yet persistent tremor in the soul. It's the uncomfortable truth that meaning must be created, not discovered, and that our choices, even the small ones, carry the weight of self-definition in an indifferent universe. It leaves us pondering the terrifying beauty of our radical freedom, asking whether we can truly embrace the burden of being our own creators, or if the sheer responsibility is too much to bear in the quiet, echoing vastness of existence. Imagine a sealed steel box containing a cat, a vial of poison, a Geiger counter, and a tiny bit of radioactive material. There's a 50% chance the radioactive material will decay, triggering the Geiger counter, which then smashes the vial and kills the cat. If it doesn't decay, the cat lives. The experiment is designed so that after an hour there's an equal probability of the cat being alive or dead. But here's the crucial point. Until you open the box and observe, what is the cat's state? This is Schrödinger's cat, a famous thought experiment devised by physicist Erwin Schrödinger to illustrate the perplexing nature of quantum superposition and the role of observation in quantum mechanics. According to certain interpretations of quantum theory, before observation, the radioactive atom exists in a superposition of both decayed and undecayed states simultaneously. If the atom is in a superposition, then the entire system, the Geiger counter, the vial, and the cat, is also in a superposition. Thus, the cat is simultaneously both alive and dead until the box is opened and a measurement is made. The paradox forces us to confront the bizarre reality of the quantum world, where particles can exist in multiple states at once, and how this strangeness might scale up to macroscopic objects. It challenges our classical, common-sense understanding of reality, where things are either one way or another. Schrödinger's cat hums with a quiet, unsettling implication. Does reality truly exist in a definite state before we observe it? Or is the act of observation itself what collapses possibility into certainty? It leaves us pondering the profound and mysterious connection between the observer and the observed, asking whether the universe, in some fundamental way, requires our conscious interaction to manifest its definitive form, or if the very fabric of existence floats in a bewildering sea of probabilities until a conscious mind intervenes. Imagine a single grain of sand. Is it a heap? No, add another grain. Still not a heap. Continue adding grains one by one. At what precise point does a collection of sand grains transform from not a heap into a heap? This seemingly simple question, known as the Sorites Paradox or the heap paradox, exposes a profound problem in how we use language and define concepts with vague boundaries. The paradox reveals the slipperiness of everyday terms. If removing one grain from a heap doesn't make it a non-heap, and you keep removing single grains, eventually you're left with one grain which clearly isn't a heap. Yet at no single step could you definitively say it ceased to be a heap. This challenges our binary logic and our reliance on precise definitions for imprecise realities. Consider a person going bald. If one hair loss doesn't make them bald and another doesn't, at what exact moment do they become bald? Or a short person becoming tall, when do they cross the threshold? The paradox isn't about the physical reality, but about the limitations of our conceptual categories and the way language attempts to impose sharp distinctions on continuous changes. The Sorites Paradox hums with a quiet unease about the certainty of our definitions. It suggests that many of the categories we use to understand the world, rich, poor, old, young, good, evil, are inherently fuzzy at their edges, defying neat classification. It leaves us pondering whether our very attempts to define and categorize the world trap us in logical cul-de-sacs, or if reality itself possesses an irreducible vagueness that our precise language simply cannot capture. Antinatalism. From the depths of philosophical thought emerges a perspective that challenges the very act of bringing new life into the world. Consider the idea that on balance it is morally wrong for humans to procreate. This is antinatalism, a position that argues for the cessation of procreation based on ethical and sometimes environmental grounds. The core argument often centers on the asymmetry between pleasure and pain. While pleasure is good for those who experience it, the absence of pleasure is not bad for those who do not exist. Pain, however, is always bad for those who experience it, and its absence is good. From this, antinatalists conclude that by bringing a new being into existence, you are exposing them to the guaranteed possibility of suffering without their consent for a benefit, pleasure, whose absence would not have been a detriment to them had they not existed. The absence of suffering, they argue, is always preferable. Consider a person on their deathbed, reflecting on their life. Even a life filled with much happiness inevitably contains moments of pain, loss, and struggle. An antinatalist might argue that the only way to ensure zero suffering for a potential individual is to ensure they never exist. They might also point to the immense environmental burden of human populations or the inherent cruelty of a world filled with injustice and conflict. Antinatalism whispers a quiet, chilling challenge to one of humanity's most fundamental drives. It forces us to confront the unasked-for burdens of existence and the moral implications of our most intimate choices. It leaves us pondering whether the greatest gift we can give a potential being is the quiet, perfect peace of non-existence, free from the inevitable struggles and sorrows of life itself. The argument from queerness. When you consider something morally wrong, say, an act of torture, Does its wrongness feel like an objective feature of the act itself, akin to its physical properties like size or mass, or is it a projection of your own feelings onto the situation? This feeling of objective yet non-physical moral properties led philosopher J.L. Mackie to formulate the argument from queerness. Mackie argued against the existence of objective moral values and duties. His argument from queerness has two parts. Metaphysical queerness. If objective moral values existed, they would be utterly unlike anything else in the universe. What kind of strange, non-physical entities would they be, and how could they possibly interact with the physical world to exert a prescriptive force on our actions? How would we perceive them? They would be queer or odd, fundamentally different from anything else we know. Epistemological queerness. If such objective moral facts existed, how would we come to know them? We don't perceive wrongness with our senses. Our moral knowledge would require some special faculty of intuition or perception, which Mackie found equally queer and hard to explain. Consider the notion of a right or wrong that exists independently of human minds, cultures, or emotions. Mackie suggests that such things would be so fundamentally different from everything else we understand about reality that their existence is highly implausible. We seem to feel they exist because our subjective feelings are objectified or projected onto the world. The argument from queerness whispers a quiet, unsettling doubt about the ultimate foundations of morality. It suggests that our deepest moral convictions might be powerful human inventions, rather than discoveries of objective truths woven into the fabric of the cosmos. It leaves us pondering whether our sense of objective right and wrong is a shared illusion, a collective dream born of our empathy and reason, rather than a reflection of an absolute moral reality beyond our subjective human experience. The non-identity problem. Imagine a policy decision made today, for example, a choice about environmental regulations or resource allocation that will have no significant impact on anyone currently alive. However, this policy will affect future generations. If we choose one policy, policy A, certain individuals will be born. If we choose another, policy B, different individuals will be born with different identities. The question is, if we choose policy B, which leads to a slightly worse average quality of life for the future population, but allows different people to exist who would otherwise not have existed at all, have we harmed anyone? This is the non-identity problem. The paradox arises because if we choose policy B, the individuals who suffer under it would not have existed at all under policy A. So, by choosing policy B, we haven't made them worse off than they would have been. Because the alternative for them was non-existence. They have no prior identity to be harmed. This makes it difficult to say that policy B is wrong, because it harms people, even if it leads to a generally lower quality of life for the population that does exist. Consider a decision about medical care for a pregnant woman that might slightly affect the child's health later in life. If the alternative decision would mean a different child, or no child is born, have you harmed that specific child by making a choice that affects its very identity? The non-identity problem hums with a quiet, unsettling implication for our ethical duties to future generations. It suggests that traditional notions of harm based on making an existing person worse off don't easily apply to policies that determine who will exist. It leaves us pondering whether our moral obligations extend beyond ensuring the well-being of existing individuals into the complex and often paradoxical realm of bringing new lives into existence, and whether a slightly worse existence is better than no existence at all. Look up at the sky, feel the warmth of the sun, or perhaps the biting chill of the wind. Consider the vast, slow-moving currents of the ocean, or the silent, invisible march of climate change across decades and centuries. These are not things you can easily grasp, touch in their entirety, or fully experience in any single moment. They are too vast, too distributed, too entangled in time and space. These are hyper-objects. Coined by philosopher Timothy Morton, a hyper-object is an object that is so massively distributed in time and space that it transcends our ordinary perception and comprehension. It is a thing, but it is simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, existing across scales that defy direct human experience. Climate change is a prime example. You can experience its effects, a heat wave, a flood, but you can never perceive climate change as a single bounded object. Other examples include the biosphere, evolution, or even global capitalism. Hyperobjects are profoundly unsettling because they challenge our anthropocentric view of reality, our tendency to focus on things we can easily manipulate and perceive. They reveal the limits of our cognitive apparatus and our tools for understanding the world. We are living within and alongside these massive invisible entities, constantly affected by them, yet unable to fully grasp their totality. The concept of hyperobjects whispers a quiet, pervasive truth about the scale of our contemporary challenges. It suggests that many of the most critical issues we face, from environmental crises to global pandemics, are not discrete problems we can simply solve and put away. They are sprawling, interconnected realities that demand new ways of thinking and perceiving. It leaves us pondering our place in a world increasingly dominated by these vast invisible forces, challenging us to expand our consciousness beyond the immediate and the tangible, into the incomprehensible dimensions of the too big to see. Infinite regress argument. Imagine a tall building supported by pillars. Each pillar in turn rests on another pillar, and that pillar rests on yet another, extending downwards endlessly, without any ultimate foundation. This is the disquieting image behind infinite regress arguments, a philosophical challenge that arises when a justification, an explanation, or a cause for something relies on a prior step, which in turn relies on another, in an unending chain. The core of an infinite regress argument is to show that a proposed explanation or justification ultimately fails because it never reaches a foundational stopping point. For instance, if you ask, why is X true? And the answer is, because Y is true. And then why is Y true? And the answer is because Z is true. And this chain goes on forever, without any self-evident or uncaused first cause, then X is never truly justified or explained. Consider the classic cosmological argument for God's existence. Everything has a cause, so the universe must have a cause, which is God. An infinite regress argument challenges this by asking, what caused God? If God is uncaused, why can't the universe itself be uncaused? If a prime mover is needed, where does the chain of causality truly begin, or does it simply stretch back infinitely without ultimate resolution? Infinite regress arguments hum with a quiet, persistent doubt about the ultimate foundations of knowledge and existence. They suggest that many of our explanations, if pushed to their logical limits, might simply dissolve into an endless echo. It leaves us pondering whether there are truly self-evident truths or uncaused causes, or if the very fabric of reality, when probed deeply enough, simply recedes into an abyss of endless prior conditions, forever withholding its ultimate origin. You know what you should do. You understand the benefits of exercise, the importance of saving money, or the wisdom of avoiding that extra slice of cake. Yet, despite knowing the rational course of action, you find yourself doing the opposite. You procrastinate, you spend recklessly, you indulge. This common, frustrating human experience is known in philosophy as akrasia, or weakness of will. Akrasia describes the phenomenon where someone acts against their better judgment. It's not about ignorance. You know what's best. It's not about compulsion in the sense of being physically forced. Instead, it's a breakdown in the connection between your reasoned beliefs and your actual actions. It feels like a battle within the self, where the rational you is overruled by another impulse or desire. Consider a smoker who genuinely believes smoking is harmful and wants to quit. They have all the facts, the desire, the motivation, yet they light up another cigarette. Or a student who desperately wants to ace an exam, knows they should study, but spends the night binge-watching TV. The weakness isn't in their intellect, but in their ability to translate rational understanding into consistent action. Akrasia whispers a quiet, persistent question about human agency and self-control. It exposes the often turbulent gap between our intentions and our behaviors, forcing us to confront the irrational currents that run beneath our rational surfaces. It leaves us pondering why, despite our best-laid plans and clear understanding, we so often find ourselves straying from the path we know we ought to take, caught in the silent, self-sabotaging hum of our own conflicted will. Inverted spectrum problem. Imagine that from birth, your experience of color is subtly different from everyone else's. When you look at what others call red, you experience what they call blue. And when you look at what they call blue, you experience red. You've learned to use the words red and blue conventionally, always matching them to the colors that others perceive as red and blue. No one would ever know your internal experience is swapped. This is the core of the inverted spectrum problem. This thought experiment, a classic in the philosophy of mind, challenges the idea that physical facts alone can fully explain subjective experience, or qualia. Your brain is physically identical to everyone else's. Your retinal cones respond the same way to wavelengths of light. Your behavior and language around color are normal. Yet, your internal sensation is qualitatively different. If two physically identical brains can have wildly different subjective experiences, then qualia cannot be simply reduced to physical states. Consider a world where all experiences are shifted. Your taste of chocolate might be my taste of vanilla. Your pain sensation might be my experience of cold. Since there's no objective external way to measure the quality of an internal sensation, we can never truly know if our qualia are shared. The inverted spectrum problem hums with a quiet, unsettling doubt about the very nature of consciousness. It suggests that there might be an irreducible private dimension to our subjective experience that lies beyond the reach of scientific measurement or objective comparison. It leaves us pondering whether our inner worlds are truly shared, or if each of us inhabits a unique, subtly shifted perceptual landscape, forever unknowable to any other mind. How can you seek knowledge if you don't already know what you're looking for? And if you do already know what you're looking for, then why bother seeking it at all? This ancient epistemological puzzle, found in Plato's dialogue Meno, is called Meno's Paradox, or the Paradox of Inquiry. It presents a fundamental dilemma for the very act of learning and discovery. Socrates, through Meno, poses this problem. If you know what you are looking for, inquiry is unnecessary. If you don't know what you are looking for, inquiry is impossible, because you wouldn't recognize it if you found it. Therefore, inquiry is either unnecessary or impossible. This suggests that genuine learning, especially of something entirely new, seems logically impossible. If you don't know the answer, how can you even begin to formulate the right questions or recognize the correct answer when presented with it? Consider searching for a lost object. If you know exactly what it looks like, you'll find it quickly. If you have no idea what you're looking for, how do you even start? Plato's famous response was the theory of anamnesis, or recollection. We don't learn new things, but rather recollect innate knowledge that our souls possessed before birth. While a compelling philosophical answer, it highlights the depth of the original paradox. Meno's paradox whispers a quiet challenge to the very process of education and discovery. It suggests that all true learning might, in some sense, be a process of uncovering what we already implicitly understand, or that our methods of inquiry are fundamentally flawed in their conception. It leaves us pondering whether genuine novelty in knowledge is truly possible, or if the pursuit of truth is an endless loop, always implicitly chasing a knowing that we already somehow possess. The Fermi Paradox. The universe is vast, ancient, and filled with billions of galaxies, each containing billions of stars. Many of these stars are likely to have planets, and a significant fraction of those planets are likely to be habitable. Given these astronomical numbers, the probability of intelligent life evolving elsewhere and potentially developing advanced civilizations capable of interstellar travel seems incredibly high. So, the perplexing question arises, where is everybody? This profound cosmic silence is the Fermi Paradox. Named after physicist Enrico Fermi, who supposedly posed the question over lunch, the paradox highlights the stark contradiction between the high probability of extraterrestrial intelligence and the utter lack of observable evidence for it. No alien signals, no colonization, no massive engineering projects visible from afar. Many potential solutions have been proposed, collectively known as the Great Filter. Perhaps life is incredibly rare. Perhaps intelligent life almost always self-destructs before becoming interstellar. Perhaps advanced civilizations exist but choose not to communicate, or they are too far away, or we're simply not looking in the right way. Or more chillingly, perhaps there's a filter ahead of us, a hurdle that almost all civilizations fail to overcome, and our future is already bleak. The Fermi Paradox hums with a quiet, pervasive loneliness in the vast expanse of the cosmos. It forces us to confront our place in the universe. Are we uniquely rare, or are we simply too early or too late to make contact? It leaves us pondering whether the silence is a sign of cosmic scarcity, a universal graveyard, or simply a temporary pause before the echoes of other intelligences finally reach us, or before our own future unfolds into a silence we can no longer escape. The Lurking Death Paradox. Imagine a perfectly healthy individual going about their daily life. Unknown to them, there is a statistical certainty, a ticking cosmic clock, that at some point in the next few years, an unforeseen, unavoidable event will lead to their sudden, unexpected death. It could be an accident, a sudden illness, a rare cosmic ray. The specific moment is unknown, but the event is guaranteed to happen. This is the chilling premise behind the Lurking Death Paradox. The paradox is less about a logical contradiction and more about the psychological and existential unease it creates. If death is a guaranteed, imminent presence, even if its precise timing is hidden, how does one live? The unexpected nature of death in this scenario is paradoxically rendered expected by the certainty of its arrival within a defined window. The individual is not truly free from the shadow of death, even if they don't know the hour. Consider the human condition itself. We are all living with a lurking death, an unknown but inevitable end. The paradox simply compresses this uncertainty into a specific, short time frame, forcing us to confront the profound impact of this knowledge. How does our perception of agency, hope, and the value of each moment shift when we know death is not just possible, but guaranteed within a narrow future window? The Lurking Death Paradox whispers a quiet, inescapable truth about our mortality. It strips away the comforting illusion of indefinite time, forcing a confrontation with the finitude of existence. It leaves us pondering how our lives would change if the subtle hum of our own mortality became a constant, undeniable presence, and whether true living requires us to embrace, rather than deny, the quiet, persistent shadow of our own inevitable end. Ethical egoism. Imagine a world where every individual, when faced with a moral decision, acts solely in their own self-interest. Not out of malice, but from a principled conviction that the morally right action is always the one that maximizes their own good. This philosophical stance is ethical egoism. Unlike psychological egoism, which claims people do always act in their self-interest, a descriptive claim, ethical egoism argues that people ought to act in their self-interest, a prescriptive claim. It asserts that individuals have no moral obligation to help others, except when it ultimately benefits themselves. Acts of apparent altruism from this perspective are either secretly self-serving or misguided. Consider a business person who donates to charity. An ethical egoist would argue that this is only morally justifiable if the donation enhances their reputation, provides a tax break, or makes them feel good. In other words, if it ultimately serves their own self-interest. The idea of sacrificing one's own well-being for the sake of others is seen as irrational or even immoral, as it diminishes one's own life. Ethical egoism whispers a quiet, provocative challenge to our common notions of morality, which often emphasize empathy, compassion, and self-sacrifice. It forces us to confront the role of self-interest in human behavior and to consider whether true altruism is ever truly possible or merely a sophisticated mask for personal gain. It leaves us pondering whether a society built on the principle of rational self-maximization would ultimately flourish, or if the pursuit of individual gain, unchecked by broader obligations, would lead to a desolate, uncooperative landscape. The problem of the arrow. Consider an arrow flying through the air. At any given instant, the arrow occupies a specific point in space. But if it occupies a single point, then at that instant it must be at rest. If the arrow is at rest at every single instant of its flight, then how can it ever be moving? This is the core of the problem of the arrow, another of Zeno's famous paradoxes, which challenges our understanding of continuous motion. The paradox operates by slicing time into an infinite series of nows. In any indivisible now, an object cannot be simultaneously moving and not moving. If it's occupying a specific point, it's stationary within that point. Therefore, motion, which requires movement between points, seems logically impossible. The arrow cannot get from one point to the next, because at every point it is frozen in time. Think of a flipbook animation. Each page shows a still image. If you only ever look at one page at a time, you see a static picture. It's only when you rapidly flip through the pages that the illusion of motion is created. Zeno's argument suggests that reality, at its most fundamental instant, is always a still picture, and the flipping motion is an illusion. The problem of the arrow hums with a quiet, persistent doubt about the very nature of change and dynamism. It suggests that our common-sense experience of continuous motion might be fundamentally incompatible with a microscopic, instantaneous view of time and space. It leaves us pondering whether the world is truly flowing, or if it is a series of static snapshots with the perception of movement arising from a trick of our minds, or a deeper mystery of quantum reality that defies our intuitive grasp. Modal Realism. Take a deep breath and ponder this. Every conceivable way the universe could be, every logically possible scenario, every roll of the cosmic dice actually exists. Not as a hypothetical, but as a fully realized concrete reality, a distinct possible world. If this is true, then not only does our universe exist, but also universes where dinosaurs evolved intelligence, where magic is real, or where you made every different choice you ever faced. This is the staggering proposition of modal realism. Championed by philosopher David Lewis, modal realism asserts that possible worlds are just as real as our actual world. They are not merely mental constructs or abstract ideas, but concrete, distinct universes, each physically isolated from the others. What makes our world actual is simply that we happen to inhabit it. The concept of possible thus becomes actual in another world. Consider a universe where you chose to pursue a completely different career. According to modal realism, that universe actually exists, and a version of you is living that life right now. Or a world where gravity repels instead of attracts. Such a bizarre, impossible-seeming universe also exists somewhere. The only constraint is logical consistency. A truly impossible world, like a round square, does not exist even in this multiverse. Modal realism hums with a quiet, mind-bending vastness, challenging our singular view of existence. It suggests that the realm of the possible is not merely an intellectual playground, but an infinite, concrete tapestry of actual realities, each unfolding in its own isolated cosmic bubble. It leaves us pondering the humbling thought that our universe is just one among an infinite multitude, and that every decision, every chance, every wild possibility is already being lived out in countless, parallel dimensions forever separated but undeniably real. Observe the progression of artificial humanoids, from early, clumsy robots to the hyper-realistic digital characters in modern films. As their resemblance to humans increases, our comfort level rises. But at a certain point, just before perfect replication, a strange and unsettling phenomenon occurs. Our comfort plunges sharply into revulsion or unease. Their near humanity suddenly feels wrong, disturbing, uncanny. This is the chilling sensation of the Uncanny Valley. Coined by roboticist Masahiro Mori, the Uncanny Valley hypothesis suggests that when robots or animated characters appear almost, but not quite, human, they elicit feelings of eeriness and discomfort in observers. It's the subtle imperfections, the minute deviations from genuine human movement or expression, that trigger our innate alarm systems. A doll is fine, a perfectly human robot might be fine, but a robot that looks almost human, with just a slight stiffness in its gaze or an odd rigidity in its smile, evokes a visceral sense of wrongness. Consider the early attempts at CGI characters in movies or advanced animatronics in theme parks. Many evoke this feeling of unease, a sense that something is fundamentally amiss beneath the surface of their human-like appearance. It's as if our brains are wired to detect the subtle cues of life, and when something mimics those cues imperfectly, it registers as a threat, a zombie or a diseased being. The Uncanny Valley hums with a quiet, persistent question about our perception of authenticity and the very nature of what makes something alive or human. It suggests a deep evolutionary mechanism at play, guarding against the subtly off or the seemingly dead but moving. It leaves us pondering whether our future interactions with advanced AI and robotics will always carry this inherent primal unease, or if we will eventually cross the valley into an acceptance of synthetic life that is truly indistinguishable from our own. The zombie argument. Imagine a creature that is in every conceivable physical detail identical to you. Its brain is wired exactly like yours, its neurons fire in the same patterns, it exhibits all the same behaviors, it walks, talks, laughs, and even claims to feel pain. Yet fundamentally, there is no inner experience, no subjective sensation, no conscious awareness. It is, to all outward appearances, a perfect human replica, but internally, it is a philosophical zombie. This chilling hypothetical is at the heart of the zombie argument. This argument, put forth by philosophers like David Chalmers, is used to challenge physicalism, the view that everything, including consciousness, can be reduced to physical properties. If a philosophical zombie is conceivable, even if not actually possible, then consciousness, qualia, must be something over and above mere physical processes. If two physically identical beings can differ in whether one possesses consciousness and the other does not, then consciousness cannot be purely physical. Consider a highly advanced AI that can perfectly simulate emotions. It can write poetry, express joy, and even appear to suffer. Yet if you believe it truly feels nothing, you are, in essence, positing it as a philosophical zombie. The zombie argument suggests that there is a hard problem of consciousness that cannot be solved by simply mapping brain activity or behavioral outputs. The zombie argument hums with a quiet, unsettling question about the very nature of subjective experience. It forces us to confront the profound mystery of why complex brain activity gives rise to the vibrant, private cinema of our minds. It leaves us pondering whether our own inner world is an emergent property of matter, or if there is something else, something non-physical and irreducible, that flickers to life behind the eyes of a truly conscious being. Cast your mind forward, imagining the entire span of human history, from our earliest ancestors to our eventual extinction. Now consider your own position within that vast timeline. Are you an early human, a midpoint human, or one of the last? The Doomsday Argument, a probabilistic argument, suggests that you are most likely to be an average human, meaning that humanity's future may be far shorter than we might hope. The argument, first outlined by Brandon Carter and later developed by John Leslie and Richard Gott, is based on a simple statistical premise. If you are a random observer within the set of all human beings who will ever live, then you are probably not among the very first or the very last. If humanity is destined to live for trillions of years, then your existence in the current era makes you an incredibly early observer, which is statistically improbable. Conversely, if humanity's existence is relatively short, then your current position is far more likely. Consider a long line of people entering a room. If you step into the room and find yourself near the beginning of the line, it suggests the line might be short. If the line were incredibly long, you'd be unlikely to be among the first few. The Doomsday Argument applies this to the line of all humans. Given that approximately 100 billion humans have lived so far, if humanity lasts for, say, only another 1,000 years, then you are statistically in a plausible middle range. If humanity lasts for millions of years, you are in the extremely unlikely early tail. The Doomsday Argument whispers a quiet, chilling warning about humanity's future. It's a purely statistical argument, not dependent on any specific scientific prediction of catastrophe, yet it casts a long shadow over our long-term prospects. It leaves us pondering whether our present moment is merely a fleeting blip in a vast cosmic timeline, or if the quiet hum of our own unique existence suggests a more finite, perhaps even predetermined end to the human story. Moral anti-realism. When we declare an action wrong, say torturing an innocent being, does that wrongness exist independently of our minds, cultures, or feelings, like the fact that apples fall due to gravity? Or is wrongness merely an expression of our subjective disapproval, our emotional response, or a cultural agreement? Moral anti-realism is the philosophical position that denies the existence of objective moral values or facts. Moral anti-realists believe that there are no such things as mind-independent moral truths. Instead, moral judgments are either expressions of emotion or emotivism. When we say, torture is wrong, we're just expressing a feeling of disgust or disapproval, like saying, boo, torture. Commands or prescriptions, prescriptivism. We're commanding others not to torture or prescribing certain behaviors. Cultural social constructs. Morality is simply a product of human societies, evolving norms or agreements with no universal inherent truth. Consider the diverse moral codes across different cultures and historical periods. A moral anti-realist might argue that this diversity points away from objective moral truths and towards the idea that morality is a malleable human invention. If morality were objective, why would there be such fundamental disagreements on seemingly basic issues across different societies? Moral anti-realism hums with a quiet, potentially liberating, but also unsettling implication. It frees us from the search for external moral commands, placing the responsibility for creating and upholding values squarely on human shoulders. Yet it also threatens to dissolve morality into mere preference or cultural relativism, making it difficult to argue for universal human rights or condemn atrocities as objectively wrong. It leaves us pondering whether our deepest sense of right and wrong is a discovery or a powerful necessary fabrication, a shared dream that we collectively sustain against the backdrop of an indifferent cosmos. The binding problem. Look around you. You perceive a unified, coherent world, a red ball bouncing, a specific melody playing, the distinct scent of coffee. Your brain processes these inputs through separate neural pathways, visual processing in one area, auditory in another, olfactory elsewhere. So how does your brain take all these disparate sensory streams, the red color, the round shape, the bouncing motion, the sound of the bounce, and bind them together into a single, unified, coherent experience of a red bouncing ball? This is the binding problem in neuroscience and philosophy of mind. The problem arises because there doesn't seem to be a single master region in the brain where all sensory information converges to form a unified conscious experience. Instead, different features of an object, color, shape, motion, are processed by specialized neural modules. How these distinct processes are integrated to produce our seamless perception of objects and events remains one of the great mysteries of the brain. Consider listening to someone speak. Your brain processes the sound of their voice, the movement of their lips, the meaning of their words, and their emotional tone, all simultaneously. Yet, you don't perceive these as separate elements, but as a unified experience of a person speaking. The binding problem asks, what is the mechanism by which these distributed neural activities are bound together to create our coherent subjective reality? The binding problem whispers a quiet, persistent challenge to our understanding of consciousness itself. It suggests that the seamless, unified world we inhabit might be a profound illusion, a masterful trick of integration performed by the brain's complex architecture. It leaves us pondering how the scattered fragments of sensory data come together to form the singular, coherent now that defines our conscious existence, and what fundamental principle binds the myriad pieces of perception into the fluid tapestry of our minds. The Preface Paradox. Imagine an academic author who has just written a complex, multi-chapter scholarly book. In the book itself, she carefully states that each and every claim she makes is rigorously supported by evidence and is, to the best of her knowledge, true. Yet in the book's preface, she writes, "Despite my best efforts, I have no doubt that there are errors in this book." This seemingly reasonable sentiment creates a logical conundrum. the Preface Paradox. The paradox arises because the author simultaneously asserts two contradictory things. Each individual claim in the book is true, implied by the meticulous research, and not all the claims in the book are true, implied by the humble admission in the preface. Both statements seem rational and justifiable, yet they cannot both be true at the same time without creating a logical inconsistency. The author is rational in believing each claim individually, and rational in believing, given the complexity of the work, that at least one error probably exists. Consider a meticulous scientist publishing a large dataset. She believes each data point is accurate. Yet, she is also aware that in any large dataset, a few errors are almost inevitable. Her belief in the individual accuracy of each point and her belief in the collective fallibility of the whole clash. The Preface Paradox hums with a quiet, unsettling truth about the limits of human knowledge and the nature of fallibility. It suggests that it is sometimes rational to hold beliefs that are, taken together, logically inconsistent. It leaves us pondering whether perfect consistency is always attainable or desirable in complex systems of belief, and whether the very act of seeking truth, especially in vast and intricate domains, inherently involves a humble acceptance of inevitable, yet elusive error. The Lottery Paradox. You buy a lottery ticket for a drawing with 10 million possible numbers, and only one winner. You have very strong evidence that your ticket will not win. The probability is 1 in 10,000,000. So it's perfectly rational to believe that your ticket will not win. In fact, it's rational to believe that no specific ticket will win, because the odds are so overwhelmingly against any single one. Yet, you also know, with certainty, that some ticket will win. This creates the logical conundrum of the lottery paradox. The paradox highlights a tension between what is individually rational to believe, that your ticket won't win, and what is collectively known to be true, that one ticket will win. If it's rational to believe, my ticket won't win, and it's rational to believe ticket number 2 won't win, and ticket number 3 won't win, and so on for every single ticket, then it seems rational to believe no ticket will win. But this directly contradicts the known fact that one ticket must win. Consider a classroom where every student is told they have a 1 in 30 chance of getting an A. It's rational for each student to believe they probably won't get an A, but it's also rational to believe that at least one student will get an A. The paradox asks how we reconcile these seemingly contradictory, yet individually rational, beliefs when dealing with very low probabilities. The lottery paradox whispers a quiet, unsettling truth about the nature of belief, probability, and justification. It suggests that our criteria for rational belief, particularly when dealing with large numbers and low probabilities, can lead to collective irrationality or logical inconsistencies. It leaves us pondering where the line lies between justified individual belief and logical collective truth, and whether our everyday reasoning is more robust than it appears when confronted with the subtle pitfalls of chance. The problem of free will and moral responsibility. Reflect deeply on your last choice, what you had for breakfast, or a significant life decision. Did you genuinely choose freely, or was that choice the inevitable outcome of a causal chain stretching back through your genetics, upbringing, brain chemistry, and the laws of physics, leaving no room for genuine alternative? This fundamental and enduring philosophical challenge is the problem of free will and moral responsibility. The tension lies between our profound intuition that we are free agents capable of making independent choices and initiating actions, and the pervasive scientific worldview that suggests all events, including human thoughts and actions, are determined by prior causes. If every thought, every desire, every action is merely a necessary consequence of what came before, then in what meaningful sense are we truly free? If our choices are determined, then how can we be truly morally responsible for our actions? If a person's actions are simply the unavoidable result of their brain state and environment, can we truly praise them for virtue or blame them for wrongdoing? The very foundation of our legal systems, our ethical judgments, and our sense of personal accountability seems to rest on the assumption of genuine free will. This problem hums with a quiet, pervasive unease in the background of human existence. It challenges our most deeply held beliefs about agency, guilt, merit, and identity. It leaves us pondering whether our vivid sense of choice is a profound truth about human nature, or merely a compelling illusion maintained by the intricate machinery of our brains, and whether the very fabric of our moral universe can withstand the cold, relentless logic of deterministic causality. Thank you for venturing into these depths with us. As our display softens, the true power of these 77 theories isn't found in answers, but in revelation. They are catalysts for inquiry, unveiling hidden patterns in your perception, inviting you to see the familiar with fresh eyes and to discover profound new depths within the very fabric of existence. May these insights illuminate your path long after our transmission concludes.